On the table, there are pots with the man's favorite houseplants. He picks up a spray bottle to water them. Our hero is relaxing in a hammock, with a tiny, fluffy kitten sleeping peacefully on his chest. He gently pets his cat, dreaming of a peaceful life. A single drop of water slowly rolls down a leaf. Sitting alone in a dark office at his computer, he suddenly wakes up and realizes it was all just a dream. With a tired sigh, he understands that the life he just lived was only in his imagination. He glances at his phone as it charges, notices a cat on the lock screen, and realizes 10 minutes have passed. He then goes back to work and clicks his mouse. Then he walks over to the vending machine and grabs an energy drink. A young man is riding on a train when an announcer says this is the last train of the night. He remembers this is the third night in a row he spent traveling, and he's finally on his way home. He thinks about his plants waiting for him and decides that the first thing he'll do is take care of them. A robotic voice announces that they are almost at the last stop. A police officer walks over and calls out to the main character. The boy is still lost in thought about his flowers and how much they need his care. The young man sits with his head down while a police officer tries to wake him up, repeatedly calling his name. In his mind, he gets distracted by the plants in the office, thinking they look neglected and probably need some fertilizer. He has no idea why everyone is making such a big fuss around him. The main character in his mind begs for a little more time to rest because he wants to see the dream again. Meanwhile, the police officer gets nervous and starts shouting at the boy to wake up. The boy opens his eyes and finds himself sitting in a wooden cart. He's wearing a raincoat, and there's a bag lying next to him on the bench. He realizes he was dreaming and thinks about how he hasn't dreamed of the past for a long time. Then, he sees a girl riding a cart with an ox near the river. She calls out to him, asking him to wake up. He leans out the window and asks what's going on. His name is Lit Reichart, and he's 19 years old. The freckled girl driving the wagon apologizes for waking him up, then points ahead and asks him to take a look. The heroes step out of the carriage and see a giant fallen tree blocking the road. Its thick branches stretch all the way to the river, and the massive trunk lies right in their way. The girl says she has no idea how to go forward, since there's water on the right and a steep cliff on the left. Lit thinks the tree is just too big. The girl lets out a tired sigh. She says they have no other choice. They need to turn around and take a different route, so they'll arrive 5 days later. The hero takes this news calmly and even feels excited because it makes their trip feel more like an adventure. She turns to the wagon and says they've got a problem. They're carrying a package from the Empire's capital that she needs to deliver the day after tomorrow. She looks upset, almost in tears, complaining that being late means a fine gets taken from her salary. She also mentions that the quota still isn't filled. At first, the hero watches her, but then he turns away. She says it's time to go and pets the bull. Then the girl notices the boy has stepped away and asks why he did that. The boy moves closer to a tree and tells them to leave, explaining that it's dangerous to stay here. He puts his hand on the tree trunk and somehow orders it to move using a mysterious power. The tree is lifted out of the ground, and something unusual starts to happen to it. New shoots and branches start growing around the tree. The hero realizes that his old life ended on the train. He probably died from exhaustion and was reborn in this world, now living in peace and harmony. He just turned 16. At this age, he becomes a true hero. The tree turns into a tangle of many branches. The girl looks at it and raises her hands in amazement. Thick branches twisted together, wrapping around the tree and lifting it high off the ground. The whole structure made of branches crashes into the river with a loud splash, sending waves rippling out in all directions. The hero stands with the girl under a big leaf, keeping them dry from the rain. He says, "Problem solved." She looks around, amazed by what she sees. She shouts with excitement and asks what kind of magic this is, guessing it might be telekinesis or wind magic. The hero shyly says it's a business secret and asks her not to tell anyone. She begs to at least brag about it a little, but he firmly says no. Let's suggest they walk a bit faster. The girl gives a big smile, agrees, and thanks him warmly. They keep traveling, passing by mountains, fields, and farms. The boy looks out the window, smiling as he realizes that the plants' magic made this possible, speeding up their growth and bringing new life. He had simply repeated the same spells on the big tree, only shifting their focus just a little. Lit believes that there are very few mages who can control plants, and out of all the wizards he knows, he's the only one with this gift. That's why he chooses not to draw attention to himself. He remembers being given a second chance at life in this peaceful world. Just as he promised, he became a masked hero, and finally, the 100-year war against the demons came to an end. He used plant magic to defeat the demons, bringing peace and safety back to the world. But in his personal life, nothing changed. Everything stayed the same as it was before his second chance. He still remembers standing in the courtroom in handcuffs with people pointing at him. 3 years have passed since then, and now they've been driving the cattle for 10 days, far away from the capital. Lit closes his eyes and imagines himself as a relaxed aristocrat from the Hein era. He thinks it might be more comfortable riding in an ox cart, but he actually enjoys traveling slowly like this. A freckled girl asks what he does, then quickly guesses he must be some kind of awesome wizard. Lit replies calmly that he's not working right now. She seems surprised and asks if he quit his job and moved to the countryside. He says he quit his job, but the truth is he was fired and left everything behind. She asks him about it again. He looks at the bottle in his hand and says he still has dreams he wants to chase. He admits he's not a hero, not a saint, and not the perfect worker right now, but at last he finally feels free. This time he chose to live by his own rules. The girl tells him they're almost there. She happily says that they are going to the one and only big city that's ruled by the guild. He leans out the window to get a better view, the wind ruffling his hair. The girl tells him there are over 100 guilds in the city and no ties to any other nations or peoples. She hopes this is the place where he'll finally find what he's looking for. She says this city gives hope to many people, and the hero wonders if he can succeed here too. They drive onto the bridge, and suddenly tall skyscrapers rise ahead. The girl introduces him to Gauntland, the city of freedom. The hero slams his mug down on the table and quickly drinks half of his drink. His mouth starts to water, just thinking about how delicious it's going to taste. He happily says that it's actually better here, because when he lived in the Empire's capital, the beer was always served warm. In this city, alcohol was banned until he turned 20, so he thinks this new world must also have some pretty strict rules. He tries the food they've brought him, a bit of dried meat, some pickles, and a slice of cheese, and thinks that everything here is just as usual. Lit notes to himself that food in this world isn't very tasty. It's either way too salty or has almost no flavor at all. He realizes that the food here is nothing like what people eat in modern Japan, where meals are much bigger. This place feels like a different world, peaceful and perfectly balanced. He remembers arriving in a world called Harmony 20 years ago. It's the largest of the 4 continents here, shaped like an hourglass, with a wide strait dividing the north and south. He thinks the Roman Empire controls the north of the continent. The Guild Union is an independent region that controls the southern continent. He thinks about how Gauntland, the city he's in now, is the only one on the southern continent that answers to the Guild Union. It's also the largest city in the south. He looks out the tavern window and thinks how different this city looks compared to the Imperial City. Maybe it's because the houses here are beautiful, or maybe it's because the war never touched this place. He notices the blooming flowers outside and realizes how well cared for they are. The girl behind the counter asks the guy if he liked the snacks. He avoids the question and says the beer is really good. She smiles and is happy to hear that. She looks at him and says he's different from everyone else. The girl asks if he's from the Empire. The boy nervously wonders if he really seems like someone from the Empire. She says he's young and good-looking. Then she glances at his coat and adds that it's really stylish too. She glances around at the other tables, noticing a mix of people and beast folk, but no one looks like him. The innkeeper asks how someone from the Reich ended up here and wonders if he's just on vacation. He starts to answer. Lit confidently says that everything depends on how much you want it. The girl laughs and says it's just because they're young. She asks his name one more time, then leaves when someone at another table calls her over. The guy keeps sipping his beer, thinking he probably shouldn't have told her his real name. Still, he feels a bit better, because he knows she has no idea who he truly is, even if she's figured out he's from the Empire. The hero realizes that since his arrival, he has met a few people. They all noticed he was from the imperial capital, but none recognized his name, so he understands that people here on the southern continent probably haven't heard of him. He's actually happy thinking that if there's no news about him, then nobody there knows he's a hero. Lit thinks about how he came here to live alone, so he decides to buy a piece of wild, untouched land. There, he can study his favorite plants and practice magic in peace. After that, he will plant his favorite flowers and plants in the empty spot. He pictures himself lying on the grass and thinks this is exactly how he wants to live. That's his dream and his plan for the future. Let's sit down and think about it. Maybe his idea could really work since he's still so young. He finishes his drink, thinking he'll have to buy the land, and is ready to fight for it no matter what. Then, he slips his hand into his jacket pocket. He pulls out the flask with the seed inside, looking at it with hope. He truly believes that this time, he will finally reach his goal and discover real freedom. He arrives at a big building. It's the Land Management Bureau, but the staff quickly refuse to sell him any land. A middle-aged elf wearing glasses apologizes sadly, saying it's not possible. The hero looks at him with tension. There's a small bag of coins on the table between them. The elf shares that he wants to buy a piece of land right in the middle of nowhere, and he's surprised to find out that even a spot like that isn't cheap. The man explains that the price is given in large gold coins, which people only use for big purchases, like buying land. That's why our hero hasn't heard of them before. He also says that one large coin is equal to 100 regular gold coins. The hero realizes he will need to pay 10,000 gold coins for this land. The elf points out that even if the bag is filled to the top with gold, it still won't be enough. Let felt sad and realized that, despite all his brave actions, he didn't save up much money. The elf looked at him closely. The man asks the boy if he's part of the guild, but Lit says no. The man replies that it's a shame. He explains that if the hero was part of a guild, he could get a loan or some help, but joining a guild also means taking on certain responsibilities. The elf suggests joining the guild because it's okay to dream big. He explains that it's a good place to get started and make some money, but the hero interrupts him, saying he doesn't really like that idea. A guy says sadly that he really doesn't want anything to hold him back. The elf says that in this case there's nothing to buy. Then Lith grabs the bag, keeps it, and says he's going to earn some money. He says he'll be back soon and asks to have everything ready for the procedure. The guy is sure he'll get what he wants. The elf tries to call him. One excited man says confidently that he'll sign the deal before lunch, because if he waits too long, someone else might snap up this great piece of land. The elf tries to stop him and just can't figure out why this guy is so excited about a place that's way out in the middle of nowhere. You'd need a whole week with slow horses to even get there, and there's nobody around for miles. Still, he decides to wait and see what happens. There are only 2 hours left until lunchtime. Lit hurries down the stairs. Lit walks down the street, surprised that he never realized how expensive buying land would be. He also wonders why even independent people around here can't seem to get things done on their own. He thinks things over and decides to start some kind of plant-related business. He considers which materials he can buy at a low cost. Let's remember how the elf talked about the guild and share a moment of sadness with him. He notices an argument in the alley where 5 men are loudly demanding something from a small woman. He decides to watch them for a moment, thinking the men might hurt or make fun of the girl. Suddenly, one of the men pushes her and she falls down. The hero can't stand it when someone picks on those who are weaker, and he just can't understand how others can watch and do nothing. Many different people walk past the alley, but no one stops to help. They just talk about how cruel the situation is and then keep going. One of the men says it's time to put an end to this, but then he suddenly notices pollen spilling from someone's hand. He casts a spell for fast growth, and thick vines instantly spring up, wrapping tightly around his enemies from head to toe so they can't move. A flower blooms on one of the vines. The boy walks by men who are completely covered in vines, his hood pulled up. The men start to faint, but the boy calms them down, telling them it's just pollen. Lit realizes he needs to leave quickly before the men see his face. If he draws attention to himself and becomes known, it could ruin all of his plans. He looks at the girl who has stood up and feels relieved that she's okay. The girl glances nervously at the people who wanted to hurt her. The blonde girl with cat ears gets down on all fours and shouts in the defeated man's face that anyone who bullies the weak will be punished by the heavens. The hero is surprised to see that the girl has animal ears and a tail. When she turns to face him, he quickly covers his face with his hand. The girl smiles, walks closer, points at him, and asks if he's the one who saved her. Still covering his face with his hand, Lit denies having anything to do with it and regrets that his habit of getting distracted made him miss his chance to escape. She starts listing the reasons why he's the only one here, watching him closely. He looks away, feeling awkward. She smiles gently and says this place feels mysterious to her, then asks if he's an enemy of the Empire. The boy finally lowers his hand and nervously asks if she knows who he really is. She says no and lets out a relieved sigh. The girl introduces herself as Manma and says she'll sort everything out right now. The hero is worried that if anyone finds out about him, things could go wrong again, just like before. He thinks about getting more pollen from his pocket to put her to sleep, but decides there's no time for that. He tells her he actually saved her life. Manma wags her tail happily and says with a big smile that she already knew it. Lit says he wants her to thank him for saving her life. The girl feels a bit embarrassed. He asks her to introduce him to people who might need help or support with their business. He nervously points out that this is just a thank you, so there's no payment involved. Moan squints at him suspiciously. The girl, looking a bit sad, says that trust is really important in this business. That's why she's making this offer, to show her gratitude. Lit feels happy when he hears this, but he can't figure out why the girl still seems so down. The guy says he just really needs a job. They walk into a busy market filled with small stalls and people moving all around them. Next to one of them stands a girl with lion-like ears and a tail. She invites people to come closer and spots Lit and Mama greeting her. The girl happily waves back. She angrily asks Manma if she's here to steal her donuts again, but then she notices Lit. The girl asks if he's a customer, but Manma introduces Lit as her generous benefactor, which surprises the girl a lot. A girl introduces herself as Mia and proudly says she's the best trader in the Golden Road Market. He says he's happy to meet her and mentions he's heard she's had some trouble. Nervously, she asks if he means the debt. Monma interrupts and says he wasn't talking about that, but about what she said earlier, how she felt like something was missing from her life. Mia relaxes and rubs the back of her neck in relief. The boy quietly wonders if there's something a little odd about her. Mia says that right now, Gauntland is really low on potions, and the strongest ones, known as high-level potions, are almost impossible to find. He notes to himself that it's strange there's still a shortage of potions, even though it's a peaceful time. Curious, he asks the girl why this is happening. She suggests it's probably because they don't have enough of the right ingredients. At the same time, Manma quietly writes something down in her notebook. She says that the red berries used for making potions were destroyed by the sun and storms. They see some customers with minor injuries, and Mir explains that this is why fights between the mercenary guild boys and the secret guild always lead to trouble. One guy notices and quickly hides his hand in his pocket. He shows them the bracelet and asks if it belongs to any of them. The girls quickly say yes, and Mia wants to know where he found it. He thinks he has a few samples with him, and if more are needed, his magic can help produce them. Life asks how much a high-level elixir costs. Mia says they don't have any in stock right now. She offers maybe 2 big gold coins. The man looks at her, surprised, and asks again. He remembers the elf saying that these coins are used for major deals, and that just one of them is worth 100 gold coins. Mia notices that potions used to cost just 1 or 2 silver coins when they were cheap. The man calculates that now the price is 40 times higher. He's happy with the information he got and realizes this is a really big improvement. Lita asks Mia what would happen if she could always sell red berries and they were the only ones doing it. The girl dreamily exclaims that winning like this would be a true victory in the economic battle and she would become rich. The boy suddenly runs off, shouting for everyone to wait a minute and promising to come right back. Everyone watches him go, looking confused and wondering what's happening. He steps into a dark alley, making sure no one is around. He remembers that about 4 years ago, when the war ended, people believed the monsters had disappeared. Because of that, there aren't any challenging missions left to hunt them down now. As the young man buries the berry, he thinks about how he doesn't belong to any group or guild, which means he can't take on jobs here. He stands up and glances at the mound of dirt, remembering that the elf was right. Joining a guild is the fastest way to make some money. But when Lit thinks about the guild, he feels sick remembering how they treated him. Frustrated, he casts a spell on a berry, telling it to grow strong. A small sprout quickly pushes up from the ground. Everything around him sparkles with magic, and waves of energy flow out from where he stands. The boy feels certain, this time, he's here to claim true freedom. Berry bushes start to grow around him, and it looks like now he can finally feed himself. He looks at the plants that have already grown, picks some berries, feels happy to see them growing, and notices how bright and shiny the fruits are. He thinks he'll need to make a few baskets, cook some jam, and find a wizard who can dry them properly. Then he heads back to the market and hides behind a tent with the girls. The hero shows them 2 baskets filled with berries, and Mia excitedly shouts that these are the exact berries they need, and there are so many of them. Manma is also surprised. Lit says he can keep paying the same amount as long as the market price doesn't drop. The girl looks worried. She imagines him as some kind of bandit and asks in fear if he's a young master with a bad temper. The hero is really surprised by this description. Lit tries to convince her, saying this deal will benefit both of them. Mia asks again if he's being honest. He sees that she's scared, understands that there are criminals in this world, and tries to calm her down by promising he's telling the truth so she won't worry. He realizes that all of this sounds suspicious, even to him, and he's starting to feel nervous. Mia watches him closely, her face tense and worried. Madma joins the conversation and calmly says that he's perfectly fine, calling him a good person, which surprises Lidu. Confidently, Mia agrees and asks him how much he wants for the delivery. He shows her a piece of paper with the total amount and says that, with the deposit included, it all adds up to about this much. He explains that he can't compromise because this is about his future. Mia hesitates for a moment, but finally agrees. She steps closer to him and confidently reminds him that they've already agreed on this. She says it's a great opportunity, and to make the most of it, you need real talent and courage. The guy agrees and adds that you have to take risks to achieve something, even though he admits it's not always easy. Mia says she isn't sure what this saying means. Lit explains he just wanted to make up something simple to show why taking risks matters. Mia asks for his name, politely calling him a valued customer. He realizes he hasn't introduced himself yet. Maya looks at him with curiosity, and Manma is also interested to know who he is. The guy understands that they trust him and judge him by what he does, not by rumors. He remembers people once called him many names, sometimes lazy, sometimes a hero, and he smiles softly, with a hint of sadness and warmth. He reaches out his hand, introduces himself, and says he's happy to meet them. Mia shakes his hand enthusiastically and tells him she respects him. They shake hands to show they've made a deal and just met each other. Mia happily announces that she can finally pay back her debt. The guy asks, a bit unsure if she really is a good merchant. Manma watches him with a soft smile, resting her chin on her notebook. Lit returns to the land sales office and apologizes to the elf for interrupting his lunch break. The elf smiles and says he appreciates that someone finally noticed. The guy realizes that many people see the admin as some kind of robot, always ready to help with anything. He feels sorry for him. The elf asks if he's managed to solve his problem, and the guy says yes. He starts putting bags of money on the table and says he made even more than he expected. Now, he has way more cash than he ever had before. ELV says again that no matter how many gold coins the boy has, it will never be enough. But the boy is sure he has what it takes, so he opens one of the pouches. He holds up one of the coins and says it's made of mithril. The man looks surprised. Lit explains that he's heard people in the Empire and the independent regions treat small coins, gold and silver, very differently. The guy worries he doesn't have enough money to pay and register, but if he adds up everything he made, it's actually just the right amount. He's surprised by how expensive it all is. The elf opens each pouch and sees they're all filled with mithril coins. The man grabs one of the pouches and excitedly announces that these are rare coins made from a special metal. He says you can trade them in many countries, and even he almost never sees them, yet here there are 100. The young guy looks around, clearly tired. He quickly covers the man's mouth with his hand, asking him to stay quiet. He doesn't want anyone to notice them. The elf is thrilled to see so many coins. In his mind, the boy hopes the elf won't tell anyone about this. The man apologizes and asks Lit who he really is, amazed at how quickly he managed to get so much money. Lit awkwardly says that he's just unemployed. The elf looks carefully at him and asks for his name. The boy feels nervous, afraid he might seem suspicious. The man keeps watching him closely. He says his full name with a hint of uncertainty. The elf apologizes, saying it's just a formality, and then breathes a sigh of relief. The man picks up a pen and starts filling out some forms. He asks the boy if he has joined the guild yet. Lichuorbly says no, and the elf replies that it's a pity. He stamps the papers and tells the boy to come back in the evening because he'll have everything done by sunset. Lit thanks him, and the elf says goodbye. Lit, with a joyful sparkle in his eyes and a big smile, holds up the document and proudly says that everything now belongs to him. The man turns to the boy again and says the guild clothing shop's big sale starts in just 30 seconds. The boy looks confused and doesn't get why the man is telling him this. The elf calmly suggests that he should get a new cloak and maybe find some new hobbies. The boy suddenly realizes that the imperial emblem on the back of his cloak has been giving him away all along. The elf awkwardly looks away, embarrassed. The boy thinks this is a really kind thing for the man to do and thanks him. The elf pretends he has nothing to do with it. He checks into a hotel for the night and unpacks his things, laying them out neatly. On the bedside table, there's a flask with a single grain inside and a candle burning softly. After his shower, he jumps onto the bed in fresh clothes and says it's been a long time since he had such a nice place to sleep, and there's even a shower here. It really was a long journey. He's lying on his bed, feeling happy about all he accomplished today. They gathered the harvest, bought some land, got all the seeds and plants they needed, and even arranged for an ox cart to be delivered tomorrow. He feels happy now that he has money and opens his eyes, looking up at the ceiling. The boy thinks about everyone he met that day and feels that they are all truly good people. At first, Lit considers joining the guild, but then he changes his mind when he notices a cloak lying on the floor. The boy looks at the imperial symbol and makes up his mind. This time, he won't make any mistakes. He's determined to finally be free. He remembers saving the empire when he was just 16 and all the trouble that came with it. Favoritism, jealousy, and constant pampering. Even after starting over, nothing about that has changed. He remembered how he once ended up in another world and started a completely new life, but then he admitted to everyone that he never wanted to go through that again. The young man chose to give up fame and become a court magician instead. He made his decision and easily got the job because he truly earned it. He believed that since the top talents of the empire worked here, he would be treated as a colleague and an equal. After a few years, people started whispering behind his back, saying he got the job because he knew a war hero, and others found him intimidating. When he heard these rumors, he realized that nothing had really changed here. He had a very simple job that had nothing to do with magic or studying plants. One day, a coworker came up to him. A man wearing glasses said in a smug tone that since the hero had some free time, he had a job for him and asked for a favor. He got assigned to a dark, forgotten room where nobody else wanted to go, sorting through messy old archives, even though he was already working extra hours. Surprisingly, digging into the research of old royal wizards, who hid secret knowledge in their work, turned out to be quite fascinating. There, the guy discovered a story about the world tree and remembered that his own world had a similar legend. As the boy got lost in his book, flipping through the pages, he suddenly pictured a girl with two ponytails. Then something caught his attention, and he looked away. There was a table with a flask on it, and a bright beam of light was shining out from the flask. Almost as if under a spell, he stepped closer and reached out his hand to her. He ran his hand over the glass, his eyes fixed on the gentle glow. The boy picked up the canteen, lifted it above his face, and looked inside. He saw something glowing strangely at the bottom. He stared in fascination at the silvery seed, with a faint blue glow inside the container. Lit had never seen or heard of a creature like this before. Curious if it might be a new species, he decided to study it more closely. Suddenly, a crowd bursts into the room and shouts at the boy to stay where he is. Holding the flask in his hand, he looks around at the people, completely confused. Gayan, wearing glasses, shouts that he is being accused of poisoning His Majesty's tea, and now he's being arrested for an attempted murder. Lit realizes what happened and quickly slips the flask into his pocket. He remembers how, during the trial, everyone was shouting that he faced the death penalty and would be banned from the Empire forever. That was when he realized he had become a victim of court politics and was unfairly accused just because of other people's ambitions. He realized he was trapped, but accepted his exile, and that's when he understood that transformation isn't the same as true freedom. After that, he realized he had to do it on his own. In the morning, he had breakfast and got himself ready for the day. He put on his new clothes that he bought the day before, some boots, gloves, and a raincoat with a buckle that looked like an upside-down L. The guy looked at himself in his new clothes and started to wonder if they really suited him, since he had let the shop assistant pick everything for him. He saw that same girl on the cart again, just like last time. It was strange to run into her here, especially if he really planned to live far away from everyone. She told him that his future home would feel like an island surrounded by land, and as he looked out the window at the busy street, he dreamed of this place somewhere in the middle of a quiet desert. He said that's exactly what he likes about this place. There's water, wide open space, and no people anywhere nearby. The guy confidently says this is the best place for him, and the girl totally agrees. He says he's not planning to come back to the city, and the girl replies that she's really going to miss him. She says it will be hard for her to visit, but asks him to let her know if he changes his mind. Lit thanks her. They slowly leave the city behind. As they drive past the fields, the boy feels like his dreams, both old and new, are finally coming true. More than anything, he wants to grow all kinds of plants. Beautiful flowers, tasty vegetables, sweet fruits, and even rare and unusual blooms. The day ends and night falls on the road. The young man dreams about waking up with the sunrise, going to sleep at night, eating the food he grows and gathers himself. He just wants a peaceful, happy life, living for his own joy. They arrive, the girl waves goodbye to him, and he waves back. He sets his suitcase down next to him. Lit looks around and realizes there's no city in sight. Everywhere he looks, all he can see is his own world and his own life stretching out before him. In front of him stretched a vast, empty desert, but as he opens his arms wide, he feels true freedom right there before him. As he watches the sunrise, he smiles and says with wonder that this is the best world there could ever be. Lit takes out a small vial with a seed inside and starts wondering what kind of flower will grow from it. He sits down on the ground and says he's been looking forward to this, thinking he'll finally have a calm and peaceful life. About a week ago in the capital city, Mia is happy that only they have powerful potions. She invites Manma to try their delicious food, but Manma politely refuses and writes something down in her notebook. Mia asks if they have any plans, but Manma replies that she's really busy and mentions they haven't talked in a long time. She talks about a famous wizard from the Empire's capital and is getting ready to start a new article. Maya praises her hard work and says she'll join her on this new adventure. Manma says she's the top journalist in the One Bird's Wing Information Guild, and right now, she's on the hunt for a newsworthy star, Lit. Meanwhile, it spends the night in a tent in the middle of the desert, waking up in the morning to find dew on the canvas. The guy tosses and turns on the couch, unable to fall asleep. On a suitcase nearby, there's a glowing tube with seeds inside, softly lighting up the room. He can't figure out why it feels so cold in here. A pixelated girl with a serious face sits right above him, staring straight at him. She looks at him and tells him firmly to get up. The guy opens his eyes, smiles, and says good morning to the girl. Jokingly, he asks if it got cold because of her intense stare. He calls her Navi, she's an artificial spirit. He tries to ask her for a few more minutes to sleep, but Navi yells at him to get up. Lit awkwardly tells her it's been a while since they've seen each other and asks how she's doing. She quickly notices that he's hiding something behind his smile. Navi explains that because she didn't receive any commands for a long time, she switched to emergency mode and now asks where everyone is. The guy sitting on the couch tells them that this is his land and that Gortland is a 10-day journey from here. The girl realizes they're on the southern continent and turns to the boy, asking what happened. Unsure of what else to say, she politely calls him sir, hoping he can explain things. The boy thinks that artificial spirits are like ancient magical creations, and in the Empire, people call them semi-independent magical beings. But Navi is different. He's completely independent and can move around on his own. She walks up to him and suddenly asks if his brain has rotted from sleeping so long. The guy realizes that Navi isn't just independent, she's also really loud when she talks. She looks him straight in the eyes and demands an answer. She asks him again what happened. He shrugs it off and says it's nothing serious, he just needed a change of scenery and moved to a new place. She doesn't answer right away, then softly says she's just a doll, made by her master, an artificial guide who only exists to follow orders. The guy disagrees with her, saying she's not just a doll because she can think for herself. She responds that it doesn't matter, even if she makes her own choices and has her own will, she still feels like just a tool. Navi says her owner only gave her an artificial personality, so she's still just an object. The boy asks her not to call herself a thing. She turns to him and says she understands that he wants to live on his own without asking for help from anyone, not even using magic. Navi adds that, despite everything, instruments feel lonely when no one plays them. The boy thinks about what she just said. She says with suspicion that now she finally gets why he's in such a tiny tent. Lit gets annoyed and replies that living like this hasn't been easy for him. The boy listens to her and promises that if he ever needs help, he will come to her. Nice smiles and nods. She's happy with what she's heard and says she's going to sleep now. Lit wishes her good night, still thinking about the word tools that he had to mention. He gets dressed and steps outside, instantly hit by the freezing cold. The young man realizes they need to find a place to stay, and fast. The guide decides that it's best to look for a water source first, and is surprised by how rough and uneven the land is. He takes out his compass and notices that the mountains to the east are covered with thick forest, which could mean there's a water source nearby, so he decides to head that way. He thinks they've already started looking for a house, so they should keep moving toward the mountains. Good news, plants have a special magic that can make the soil better, but our hero chooses not to rely on this too much because he wants to experience real adventures, and he only has a few of these magic seeds. A man decides he will rely on himself for as long as possible. He grabs his suitcase and walking stick and starts moving toward the mountain, realizing he hasn't walked like this in a long time. He's barely breathing, leaning heavily on his stick. It's hard for him to move. The boy looks at the tall mountains in the east, standing right in front of them, and wonders how they'll ever make it there. He keeps telling himself that he's not using magic and is moving on his own. He tries to walk slowly, but after a few steps, his cane slips from his hand and falls to the ground. The boy takes advantage of how fast he's growing and builds a cart and tracks so he can ride around. The hero explains that even back in his old world, as an avid gamer, he would never wander around the map without a purpose. He's riding in a cart along the tracks, the wind blowing through his hair, and he's having the time of his life, thinking about how awesome it is. Leet quickly zooms downward and thinks it feels just like riding a roller coaster. Suddenly, he wonders, what if he could turn this drop into a real train ride? He thoughtfully says that a train in another world sounds really interesting. The hero smiles with satisfaction, feels the speed is just right, and lowers the wooden brake to slow down a little. To his horror, he sees the lever snap, and the trolley keeps speeding down the tracks just as fast. The guy suddenly realizes something's wrong. The slope is really steep, and he's speeding up fast. Then he smells smoke and notices his tire is on fire. At that exact moment, something else catches his attention. At the end of the track, where the rails haven't been laid yet, he spots a huge rock and realizes he might crash into it. He starts to panic, afraid that if he doesn't stop now, he'll crash at full speed. In his mind, he's already bracing for impact and cursing. Lit calls out to Navi and asks for an update. Navi tells him that the map is starting to come together. After taking a quick look, Lit says there could be a way down about 220 meters to the northwest. The girl says there are only 4 seconds left until they reach the big rock, but the boy cuts her off. The cart keeps racing forward. He realizes there's no time to build tracks, so he casts a new spell. He throws down seeds and commands them to grow instantly. The cart shoots up the rails, bursts apart, and the boy soars high over a giant cliff. He lands softly on a big meadow full of flowers, starts laughing, and says it was a lot of fun. Navi appears next to him and notices the flower pillows he made, casually asking if he's still alive. Lit happily replies that she showed up just in time. The boy thanks her for saving their lives. The girl gives him a small but genuine smile. She says there's no need to thank her, since she's just a tool helping out, but Lit just shrugs it off and tells her she's connected again. Novi was the first to hear the voice. She asked how he was doing and welcomed him to harmony, just like the system greeting you in a game. The boy used ancient magic he discovered in some old ruins to create a body for this voice, and that's how the artificial spirit was born. He truly brought this instrument to life, making it feel as if it had its own soul. At the same time, the guy really wanted her to be his friend. He confidently told her that he would explain why he was there. They talk late into the night. Navi looks at him with sad eyes and asks why he never told her before. He explains that once everyone finds out he's an outcast, even she will turn away from him for 3 months. Navi says in a gloomy voice that 12 months of torment is more than enough. Lit thinks this sounds pretty scary, but he goes on to explain more. The guy says he didn't want her to hear all that nonsense. The girl thinks he's already forgotten everything and asks Hart if he missed her. Lit looks at her with a gentle smile, then raises his head to the sky and says he finally feels free. He looks up at the starry sky with a smile, dreaming about what true freedom feels like. Nava looks at the boy with sadness in her eyes. She says she kind of understands what's going on, and then she switches to sleep mode. Lit wishes her good night. The guy gets up and thinks he knows what's going on. Navi is probably mad and feels hurt because he didn't call her before starting to build the house or something like that, and now everything turned out this way. He gazes into the distance, lost in thought, then lifts his hands confidently and announces that tonight he'll sleep in a tent, and this time he'll make it better than ever. Navi stops him for a moment because she has something to say. She says that 93% of his property was totally destroyed. The woman is surprised by what she just said and realizes their tent is destroyed. He asks her to find them a new place to stay, but she doesn't reply anymore. A girl is secretly watching them from behind a rock. Lit sits next to the wreckage and lists everything that broke during the crash. Almost nothing is left, just a blanket and a few seeds. Hugging his knees, he quietly admits that this is much harder than he ever imagined. He grabs his staff, says that nothing can be changed now, and stands up, realizing that survival is all that matters right now. The boy waves his staff, tosses some seeds, and says a spell to make things grow quickly. Green vines rise from the ground right in front of him. They twist and wrap around each other, reaching higher, and somewhere between them, apples are already starting to grow. The mountain peaks look like glowing lanterns shining from within. Lit closes his eyes and focuses deeply. He opens his eyes and confidently looks at the finished fence and the well-lit yard. Next, he looks at the small log house standing on short stilts and decides this will be his new home. In the yard, he builds a simple faucet out of some branches sticking out of the ground. As he looks at it, he thinks to himself, having water is the most important thing in life, but when he turns the tap, only a few drops come out. He squats down, feeling disappointed. The drought has made it impossible to reach the underground water. He thinks about how far he's come, and yet he still can't find the river, only something that looks a bit like a path. The man guesses the river used to flow here. He checks his map and notes that, even with GPS, this place still feels like a vast, empty wilderness. Let's think about Tomio for a moment. Is it really true that there's absolutely no water on the land he bought? The hero remembers his conversation with the elf. He clearly asked for a flat piece of land, a bit of empty space, and a water source for building. Now, he wonders if there's been a mistake, since he got exactly what he requested. He looks at the small amount in the cup and thinks, at least there's something. Even though he'll have to wait in time, it will be enough to grow something useful. The guy remembers the mysterious experimental seed and feels relieved that it's still safe. Since he took it from the archive before the testing started, Lit is sure it's something valuable. He guesses it might be a tree seed, so he decides to grow a small seedling first. He grabs a small pot, fills it with soil, happily takes a seed and plants it. The boy lifts the piece up toward the sky, excited to see what it will one day become. He thinks he should water the soil today, since he plans to give it a good watering tomorrow morning. Then, Jans walks up the stairs into the house, ready to eat the apples he set aside earlier. But as soon as he takes a bite, he winces at the sour taste. In the morning, a boy steps outside, checks the garden beds, and looks at a nearby rock. He wonders if anyone could be there even though he doubts it, but then he suddenly sees someone's hand gripping the rock. He starts to panic, thinking he might be seeing things, but he quickly calms down and pulls himself together. Gathering his courage, he walks up to the rock, carefully looks around to make sure it's safe, and then peeks behind it. There's a girl sitting there. Her hands are covered in wounds, but she's holding a flower pot close. Tears are shining in her eyes. The boy is amazed by his discovery. He realizes that the girl's tiara isn't just jewelry, it's actually a real, living flower. He wakes Navi and asks her to check what's happening. Navi appears and lets him know that the reboot is complete. After the evaluation is done, Navi says the girl is 14 years old, she's considered a regular person, and her size is unknown to the system. Navi also mentions that the girl is part of the flower people race. The boy is thrilled by the news and shouts that he never imagined meeting flower people. The girl looks scared, while Navi is a bit annoyed and tells her she's worrying too much. The hero feels confused by everything going on. The boy remembers hearing and reading stories about the flower people, humans who live close to nature and know how to care for plants, but he always thought these were just fairy tales. The guy tries to calm his racing thoughts. Who is this mysterious girl? Are there others like her? And why did she choose to plant these seeds on his field? First, he tries to calm the girl down, telling her everything is okay and asking if something is bothering her. Navi tells the boy that people believe the flower folk can't understand other languages. The girl looks at him nervously, and he notices the plant she's holding in her hand. Lit recognizes the springberries, but notices they are sick. She also remembers that she was the one who planted them in this field. He sits down next to her so they are at the same level, introduces himself, and gently asks for her name. The girl hesitates for a moment, but then quietly asks his name again, watching him carefully. Navi wanted to say something else, but the girl softly says her name, Frau. The flower on her diadem starts to bloom. Her whole tiara lit up, and now she says her name with more confidence and a stronger voice. The guy smiles and says he's happy to meet you. He explains that he's a mage with the power to control plants. Lit notices that Frau can understand basic words. Navi asks him if he will help her deal with Frau. He replies that Frau isn't really a serious threat to what they are planning. Frode looks sadly at the petals in her hands, but the hero reassures her, "Don't worry, I'll fix everything. I'll be okay." The girl turns to him, surprised. He plants the sprout in the garden bed and gently ties it to a stick for support. Then he and Frou sit next to the plant. The boy says it needs more water and iron, so he sprinkles some iron powder on the soil and then waters the little sprout. He casts a healing spell, and with his magic, the plants become healthier. The leaves perk up, turning brighter, greener, and full of life. The girl watches everything with surprise and lets out a quiet sigh. The boy thinks he's just helping the plant with its healing powers. He tells the girl not to worry, but suddenly he goes silent and looks at her in shock. The flower on her tiara opens up completely, spreading wide, and almost covering her entire head like a beautiful floral crown. A boy with bright, excited eyes gazes at a beautiful, lush plant. He believes this flower blooms when it's happy. He really loves that, and he's never seen anything like it before. A woman awkwardly thanks a guy, breaking her gratitude into little bits. Lit looks at her with surprise. The girl beams with a wide, genuine smile and thanks him warmly from the bottom of her heart. The guy thinks it's really cute. Navi shows up and asks if they're in any trouble. Dennis calmly explains that the plants aren't dangerous. The girl quietly agrees. Froda stood up, placed her hands gently on his chest, and kept thanking him over and over again. He looks at the girl with kindness and understanding. The guy sadly thinks that Frou must be in trouble, which made her take such a big risk. She decided to plant berries in his field, hoping to find some good soil. He imagines her spending night after night trying to keep a plant alive in dry soil all these years. Navi tells him that Frau's love for him has only grown stronger. The boy tells her to get some rest. She reminds him not to forget about his own dreams. He tells himself again that he wants to be alone and there's no point getting involved. To him, this girl is just a stranger. But then he notices she's gripping his sleeve tightly, and he can see she's shaking. A guy explains that a springberry is a fruit similar to a peach with a raspberry flavor, and people use it to make different potions. However, instead of making you feel energized, the berry turns into a sour juice, but this only happens to humans. Lit gently puts his hands on her back, hugs her, and realizes that being close to her feels healing, like a sweet berry that makes everything better. He believes that Frau wants to help her people. When the girl hears this, her eyes widen in surprise. Far away in the eastern mountains is a hidden village where the flower people live. They build their tiny houses high up in the trees. All the residents look around with worried expressions on their faces. The trickster brought him to her village. They're sitting in someone's house, and Let asks if they drink healing water made from forest berries. The trickster doesn't know what he's talking about. The guy changes his words to make it easier for her to understand. She says yes. Lit thinks that the spring berry brew is what people here call a potion. He remembers that for the second year in a row, there are almost no spring berries. The harvest is tiny and most plants die before they even sprout. He asks if all the berries are gone. Fru says yes. Because of this, life is getting harder for the locals. He realizes that no one is making healing potions from spring berries anymore, and the flower people, who need them to survive, are getting weaker, especially the older folks and the children. The boy realizes that anyone can die. The girl, with tears in her eyes, agrees with him. The hero glances at the trembling girl and realizes she's the village chief's daughter, the one who tried so hard to save him. Late frowns. He realizes that things are actually much worse than he thought. Lit believes this berry is actually a medicinal plant and thinks that eating it could help fight some common illnesses found in the area. The guy thinks, from what he's heard, it never really rains here, but the mountains are still damp, so maybe there's underground water in the mountains. The locals just don't have a way to get to it. The hero also notices that the plants are lacking iron and fresh water, and realizes that the main problem is really the shortage of water. He gets up from the table and says he's going to plant spring berries in his field because he has underground water. Frauel looks at him, surprised. He notices that the ground has already been plowed. Navi interrupts him and asks if he wants to help this village. The boy agrees. The girl from Jackson warns that the land there can become barren if they keep planting crops without giving it a break. She says, even someone as tough as him will have a hard time surviving without enough water. She asks if all these struggles might distract him from his real goals, and wonders if he'd be better off living alone, with no worries at all. The girl builds up tension by reminding him about his past lives, how hard he tried, and points out that he's about to make the same mistake all over again. The boy smiles, reassures her, and says he'll be fine and can take care of himself. Nava vanishes. He sighs because he's planning to make the underground water pipes bigger and run them farther, so he can pump more water. And if he adds a bit more iron, handling his growth simulator will become much easier. The boy confidently says the plants will grow strong and healthy, but the girl is doubtful and asks him again just to be sure. Lit realizes that even with magic, there still won't be enough seeds, and that they'll need people to help with large-scale watering and healing. This is going to be really difficult. The girl runs out of the house and starts asking her neighbors for help, and soon the boy watches in surprise as everything unfolds. All the residents showed up confident and ready to lend a hand. It's strange for him to realize he's a foreigner and from a different background, but even so, they trusted him and stood by his side. That's why he doesn't want to let them down and promises to make everything right. Back in his own yard, the boy starts thinking that maybe spring berries have their own language, just like flowers do. He waves his staff, picturing growth in his mind, and green shoots quickly stretch upwards. Flower people gather water to help, passing a bucket from one to another. They water their garden beds one after another, each taking care of their own, while the hero's mind drifts off, thinking about sowing. The boy adds another secret rule in his head. Later that night, he tells Frau it's time to go to sleep, but she stubbornly stays in bed. Lit looks at her with a hint of superiority. This honors the courage of people who keep fighting for their homeland, even after losing everything, refusing to give up no matter how empty or abandoned their land may seem. The boy suddenly starts to grow taller, while the girl watches the field with intense focus. Everything they worked so hard to plant is finally growing and blooming, and now everyone is celebrating and jumping for joy. A clever woman with sad eyes walks up to some ripe fruit, then her face lights up with a happy smile. They light a big campfire. They set up a huge table filled with all sorts of food, put a crown on the boy's head, and keep thanking him over and over. He barely has a chance to explain anything, tries to say he can't possibly eat it all, and is completely confused about where the crown on his head even came from. Leet also asks people not to send their daughters to live with him because it looks suspicious. Meanwhile, the villagers keep thanking him over and over again. The guy looks at everything, puts his hands on his head, and can't believe how this could possibly happen. He remembers how they worked for 3 days and nights to save the berries, then made a special drink from them and gave it to the sick people. Let notices that the patient is finally getting better thanks to the team's hard work and says with relief, after 3 sleepless nights, things are finally looking up. After a while, he and Frower are sitting together on a log, with the girl snuggling close to him. In his mind, he wonders why she's standing so close and asks her not to get too attached to him. She pouts in annoyance, but the guy thinks it looks absolutely adorable. Navi jumps into the conversation and points out that a relationship built like this won't last very long. The guy asks what she means, and she replies skeptically, saying he's suddenly the savior of an entire race. Lit tells her to be quiet. Soon after, Navi asks the hero why he chose to help these people. He looks at the guests thoughtfully and says he just enjoys being around people who care about nature as much as he does. The girl isn't fully convinced by his answer, but she decides to accept it anyway. Fru spots someone near the fire and stands up. The others instantly notice and turn their attention to the scene. She starts to cry and runs toward her as fast as she can. She rushes over to the girl and gives her a big, warm hug. The girl is holding back her tears as she says something to Frau, then answers her while crying. Navi says that this girl is really beautiful. The boy adds that she has also recovered from an illness, and then, as he thinks about it, he realizes something important. He says she's the leader of this tribe, and her name is Mama Fru. Navi says the girl really does look a lot like her, then she glances over at the boy. Tears well up in Litz's eyes as he says he's happy he could help them. The girl watches him closely. She remembers that at first she was just a voice, meant only for him, and only he could recognize her. She used to do all the tests for him. One day, Lit started talking with someone about abstract topics and paused for a moment to think before answering. The boy felt happy when he heard the answer and started asking different questions. He and the voice chatted easily, having a friendly and relaxed conversation. In the future, she stayed by his side, helping him through everyday moments and standing strong with him during the toughest times. One day, he asked her if she ever felt bored without having a body. She replied that as long as he talked to her, she didn't mind at all. Let's say sorry to her and remember how he made her body, hoping that his magic would help her stand on her own. The guy said sadly that he didn't want to use her just as a tool. She looked at him with gentle eyes. Navi smiles and tells him that he's always a good person. Lit waves it off and says he's just a regular guy, nothing special. She says that's not exactly the right word. He asks what she means. The girl admits she was wrong not to agree with him about helping others, and she congratulates the guy. She points out that she's never seen so many people benefit from what he's done. He watches the happy people around him. Some people have a drink, others just sit quietly, and some are simply happy to spend time with loved ones. The boy watches as the mother and daughter finally reunite, and he feels warmth in his heart. He says that Navi was right. Still, the girl notices that he often takes on too much responsibility and asks him to let her help, promising she'll return the favor. She truly hopes he'll follow his heart and live the way he feels is right. The ice was surprised when he thought he saw a smile on Navi's usually calm face. The guy smiles and tells the girl she's being really honest today. She looks away shyly. She looks up at him, her cheeks turning red. The hero keeps teasing her and jokes that even Navi gets shy sometimes. She gives him a reproachful look, but he just laughs, says sorry, and thanks her. The guy is already imagining how peaceful his life will be here, enjoying his own company, far from everyone else. He looks at Frau as she waves to him and suddenly realizes that the people he's met in Galtland are completely different from anyone he's known before. Smiling, the boy reaches out his hand to the girl. Fru grabs his hand and gently pulls him closer. He doesn't resist and stands up. A year ago, Lit used to think drunk parties were awful. He didn't enjoy the atmosphere at all and always felt out of place around people. But now, as he dances with Fry by the campfire, he can't help but smile for real. The guy thinks to himself that he actually feels pretty good. Fry stands next to his mom and asks the boy, "Can you tell me your name?" At first, he said it without thinking, but then realized it was rude, so he said everything again properly. Fry calls out his name and with a shaky voice says they would like to help work on his farm. He feels awkward asking what she means, but then it finally clicks for him. The guy asks again to make sure it's really true. Around this time, a newspaper in Galtland publishes a story about a skilled mage from the Empire's capital who has just arrived on the southern continent. Moan Mahans takes them outside and promotes them as a special offer. Mia asks if this is about literature. The girl angrily yells at Mia to stop ruining the story. Manma says this story belongs to her alone, and she plans to earn money from it, little by little. The article lands at the feet of a blonde girl with a long ponytail. She's reading a story about someone who can control plants and a powerful wizard. Her eyes light up as she recognizes the word summer in the description and happily says she has finally found it. The girl grips the newspaper tightly, her emotions clear on her face, and she says with confidence that she, Adele, will definitely bring him back to the capital. On the windowsill, there's a pot with a mysterious seed inside. The seed dreams of leaving everything behind and starting a new life. As it grows, it keeps thinking about how it left its old world and ended up in this quiet, faraway place. The guy looks into the distance, thinking about how he did all this just to live a peaceful and simple life. Then he notices the garden beds and is surprised. All the flower people are now working in his field, which he never expected. Navi says everything happened because he didn't refuse when they asked for help. The boy sadly thinks he just couldn't say no when he saw how determined they were. He checks their work and is impressed to see they have collected even more than expected. 50 baskets of spring berries for his business and another 50 baskets, just like them, for making medicine. You watch as the flower people carefully tend to their plants and work in the fields on their own. At that moment, Fry waves at you. He happily waves back at her. Navi eyes him with suspicion. She frowns and tells him he's lazy, warning that one day he'll regret it, but Lit doesn't see that it's already happened to her. The girl tries to talk to him again. He says that a stranger has entered their land. Suddenly, a giant clawed paw appears on the dry ground. The guy waves at the newcomers and tells them everything is fine. He was already told they would come. Navi asks if he knows these people. The flower people also notice the visitors. Lit says they helped him out a little. Maya and Manma wave back happily as they ride in a carriage pulled by a giant sand lizard. Mia is amazed by how many red berries are here. It feels like they're everywhere. Let's just say he owes everything to the flower people. The locals watch new visitors with suspicion. Manma quickly writes down a note about the flower people in her notebook. Maya realizes she never heard about them before, so now that they're here, she decides to walk over and check it out. She says she'd like to ask him to make another secret exclusive deal with their guild, just between the two of them. The guy thinks it over and realizes there are some good sides to this. He doesn't have to worry about where to sell his product, and his location will stay secret. He actually wanted to suggest this deal himself, but he's glad Mia brought it up first. He thinks he can do better and mentions he has some other things he'd like to sell, but he still agrees to keep working with her. Before he even manages to share the details, Mia already agrees to the offer. She says her instincts are telling her it's the right thing to do. Manma notices that Mia is joking around even more than usual and gets a bit suspicious. Lit politely offers to bring the document, but Manma stops him and suggests he can bring it later. The girl says it's her turn to do her job now. The guy is surprised because he thought they were from the same guild, but Mia explains that they're actually not. Then Manma apologizes for not introducing herself sooner. She introduces herself as the top journalist at the news outlet Wings of Feather. The guy looks at the newspaper handed to him, clearly surprised. The girl smiles, remembering how she helped by spreading the word about what he did, so maybe he should thank her. She reads a line about a wizard from the Empire's capital. Manma adds that she purposely made herself seem like the damsel in distress who was attacked. The girl walks up to him and warns him not to make things more difficult. Mia adds that Feathered Wings is a powerful organization. Everyone in the city, and maybe even the whole southern continent, would have heard of them. This thought terrifies him because it means everything they've worked for could end. He begs Navi to help. The girl snaps back, saying she was deactivated at the time and has no idea what happened. Lit has no choice but to admit she's right. Suddenly, Manman jumps on the guy and knocks him to the ground. She tells him in a mysterious way that he can trust them with anything. Her hair brushes against his face, and he realizes it feels as soft and comforting as a cat's fur. He can't resist the softness of her fur when she's on top of him. At first, the person asks with surprise, "Who lit this?" Then, they take a deep breath out. At that moment, Fry walks over and interrupts their conversation. She asks if these are his friends, but everyone looks at her, and Mia notices they actually seem more like business partners. She asks again, wanting to know what partners really means. Fry happily opens his arms in greeting and says that his friends are always welcome too. The villagers are already bringing over a barrel of drink, ready to show some warm hospitality. The girls say they're friends who love tasty food, already imagining the delicious treats waiting for them in that barrel. They are happy because this is Mata Tobai wine. The people around them are celebrating too. It's amazing what these flower people can do. Fry says that's exactly what cats love. The man thoughtfully says that this wine reminds him of Matatabi because of its qualities. He adds that this recipe has been passed down in Frau's family for generations. The hero is impressed by how many unique recipes they have kept, and he sighs with relief. Thank you, Frau. It's great that this unusual step helped him calm down and think things through. He says he's going to meet Manma. Frau excitedly asks if they're planning to have a good time together. He politely refuses, explaining that he has an important business meeting and a serious conversation coming up. He takes a sip from his mug to give himself a little courage. The guy sits with Mia and Manma as they compliment the food and tell him they enjoy talking with him. He thanks them for coming, says he had a great time, and asks if they liked the drink. Mom says it tastes really good. The hero is happy to hear that and offers them more to drink if they like it. They reply that he's very thoughtful. Soon, the girls are already a bit tipsy. Lit watches them with a smile and jokes that he never thought his talent for entertaining people would come in so handy. Manma then asks him if he knows who actually made the drink. He says it was made by the flower people and adds that their techniques are truly amazing. They can turn spring berries into incredible wine and juice. Myanmar can't believe this actually happened here, and Mia nods, saying she'll have another drink. The man decides this is the perfect moment to make his move. He remembers their last conversation when a slightly drunk man walks up to him, telling him she needs to see everything for herself and urging him to hurry. He says he can't talk about himself because he doesn't want anyone to know he's here. Instead, he promises to share something even more interesting. Myanmar looks at him, not sure she can trust him. Lit talks about a famous sake made in a mysterious region, a secretive tribe known as the Flower People, and a hidden treasure. Myanmar admits she was surprised when she learned about these people. She says it's too simple, but the story about a mysterious wizard saving a rare flower species is much more exciting. The guy is worried because even when the girl has had a few drinks, she still acts totally confident and composed, like a real pro, but he just can't let go of his own ambitions. Lit says Mia should sell this drink at the town fair. Manma asks if he's talking about the same offer. He points to the table and says that everything here tastes amazing, and because of their good reputation, their food will sell even better. Manma agrees and asks about the drink. The guy explains that it depends on who makes it, since people are always curious about every detail. Manna knows that sharing his story can help him sell more. He wants to reveal this story bit by bit, but the girl thinks it's just a weird rumor with no truth or value. The man says that maybe this would be true for an ordinary journalist, but she's different. She has real energy, she isn't afraid of danger or tough situations, and she's determined to get to the bottom of this story, even in such a remote area. Manma's eyes lit up. She said she needs to be able to tell a true story. Lit points out that their article gained attention because it's connected to me and my products, and people genuinely find it interesting. He says customers really enjoy the drinks they buy at my store and are always excited to try something new. The hero admits that he dreams of finding a village where he can settle down, enjoy delicious food and drinks, and feeling truly happy, dance around a big bonfire. He excitedly says he wants to live a happy life and create his own paradise, what some people call a utopia. Manma smiles and says you don't have to tell everything. Sometimes, stories are better left a little mysterious. The boy feels like she really understands him. Let's say she did everything right. If her story becomes legendary, their brand will get even more popular. Leet reaches out to her, inviting her to accept the offer and says it will benefit her. He adds that he wants to sign an exclusive contract with them. Manma notices that it's exactly the same deal Mia got. The guy says he wants the girl to live the life she dreams of, but at the same time, he asks her to keep their relationship a secret. Monmer admits that if things work out, she'll have a lot of money. But she hesitates, mentioning she's worried about being written about in the media. Mia interrupts her, jumps onto Manmu, and says she's in a bad mood, but she can cheer him up. Lit realizes he should take advantage of this opportunity. He realizes she's almost ready to agree, so he gently takes her hands and earnestly begs her to say yes. The girl presses her lips together, picks up a pen, and says she can't help. She excitedly says she's ready to sign an exclusive contract with Lit and promises that, as a top-notch reporter, Manmu the Great is someone you can always count on. They hug the confused boy from both sides and tell him this will be their little secret. Manma says she's happy to meet Lit, and Lit thanks her. They shout that everyone should escape poverty and get rich. Some people think it's just another money-making scheme, but most ignore that. They bang their mugs together and celebrate a good deal. Navi believes this is exactly where they should have started. The boy feels he can protect himself and keep this place safe, and he's also found real friends here. A month later, they come to him again. Mia rushes out and excitedly shouts that something amazing has happened. Mia happily shares that their product has become a real hit in the city. Manma admits she's tired of always asking clients if they have more information, but the guy notices this story is becoming more popular and people are getting interested in it. The girls cheered happily, saying that working with Leto would bring them lots of money. The boy looked at them with a warm, gentle smile. He's happy that his hopes for them have paid off and they're steadily growing their wealth. He also appreciates that, just as they promised, they keep his information private. Lit is happy because he feels like the first stage is done. Now, he has no money worries and enough savings to run his business smoothly. Navi greets him and suggests it might be nice to take a short break. The boy immediately agrees. He lets everyone know, even the flowers in the garden beds, that it's time to celebrate. The guy suggests having a barbecue. He sets up the grill. Manma suggests pouring some alcohol on it, and Mia agrees. The girl with white hair says they should do things one step at a time, but Mia starts chasing her around anyway. Frau just watches and smiles. Lit licks his lips as he gazes hungrily at the big piece of meat. He thinks the meat came straight from the butcher. He even asked a wizard to cool it down so it's still fresh. They already have a fancy set they bought from Mia, special salt and fireproof skewers. He slices the meat, threads it onto skewers, sprinkles some salt, and places it over the fire. After a while, the food was ready. The vegetables had a crispy golden crust, and the meat was juicy and full of delicious aroma. The guy pointed to the right side of the grill, where some food was cooking. He explained that this part was for the journalist and the saleswoman because they don't eat onions or garlic. The girls were surprised he knew this secret about them, since it was actually true. The veggie kebabs were for Fro and her friends. Then the guy handed Navi another kebab, and she accepted it with a grateful smile. After the boy finished giving out the food, he turned around to check that everyone got enough. He saw a crowd of happy people, all wishing each other, and the boy a good meal with big smiles on their faces. When he took a small bite, he suddenly froze and covered his mouth with his hand, as if something unexpected had happened. Of course, this startled everyone nearby, and Navi rushed over to him, worried and confused about what was going on. The young man fell to the ground, and the frightened girls rushed over, asking if the meat was poisoned or spoiled. Without getting up, Lit lifted his other hand to his mouth, which only made the girls more worried. But to everyone's surprise, the boy stretched out his arms, looked up, and with a big smile on his face, shouted that the dish was actually delicious. The girls stood frozen in surprise. They hadn't expected this at all, and the reaction seemed quite strange to them. The journalist admitted that it moved her to tears, and she wasn't the only one. A few others started crying too. The boy promised not to do it again and asked the girls to stop crying. A little later, as Lit was finishing his barbecue, Mia came over to him with a request since he was the host of the place. She suggested that they give this place a name, and Mom agreed, saying it's always awkward when a place doesn't have one. Suddenly, Frau ran up to Lit with a big smile, showing that she was also curious to learn the name of this place. The guy hadn't really thought about it before. Navi noticed that her worried friend seemed to have a bit of trouble with style. He glanced awkwardly at his assistant, surprised that she understood him so well. The girls surrounded Lit and insisted that he quickly give a name to this nameless land. Looking around, he paused to think. He carefully noticed the nature around him, the house he had built with his own hands, and the girls sitting nearby. It felt like he was remembering something from long ago. Then he said that the place would be called the village of Tagan. The girls happily agreed, since it was a beautiful name. Only Navi noticed that it was actually a name from his homeland, but she thought that wasn't a bad thing at all. Old writers could never have imagined this. Somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, far from everyone he knows, he's making himself a simple veggie barbecue with food he grew in his own garden. And with so many people around, everything feels so different from the life he once dreamed about. But this didn't make him sad at all, because he still felt happy. He cheerfully raised his arms and announced with confidence that from now on, this village would be called Tagan. Even though things didn't go exactly as he planned, this place still felt like paradise to him. It was beautiful here and the people were great. What more could he want? In the evening, the guy still wasn't sure what he wanted. Maybe he just needed some time alone. But it was already late, so he went to bed. The girls around him were snoring, making it nearly impossible for him to fall asleep. Let's imagine the moment when Navi came back to report to him. She told him that this time, it wasn't a guest entering their land, but a complete stranger. A beast-like monster appears and instantly acts aggressive. 100 years ago, underground ruins mysteriously appeared in the northern part of the Romanza Empire. Monsters started coming out of these ruins, and soon, war broke out across the empire. To protect themselves, the people of the southern continent built a huge wall across the narrow strip of land that joined them to the north. This wall was meant to block the only path between north and south, stopping the monsters from getting through. This meant there were supposed to be almost no monsters on the southern continent. That's why Lit just couldn't figure out how they ended up here. Navi pointed out that, in her view, there was a gap between theory and reality. The northern and southern continents hardly had any real connection, and that made Lit realize he might have relied too much on the information he got from the Empire. But the guy wanted to know how many monsters there were and what kind they were. The assistant said there was only one monster, and it was just a regular one, not an advanced type. Monsters in this world come in many shapes and levels of danger. The weakest ones are easy to handle, even if there are a lot of them. The ones in the middle are tougher because they have magic powers and are more of a threat. But the most dangerous monsters are true leaders. They command their own armies and have magical factories to create weapons or even new creatures. The girl asked if they should back off, but Lit said no. Back in the Empire, he was used to fighting alone, so giving up just wasn't his way. And these aren't just ordinary monsters, they're creatures of a special kind. Lit wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible, but first he had to make sure everyone was evacuated and safe. Meanwhile, the girls were starting to wake up. When the girls woke up, they screamed in fear, unsure if they were still drunk or just imagining things. Meanwhile, the creature, which looked a lot like a tiger, was getting ready to attack. The monster let out a fierce roar before attacking. Lit ordered Navi to get everyone away from the battlefield. Even though he didn't want to leave, he knew he had no other choice, so he decided to use his special battle herb. As the monster got really close, the young man was about to use his speed growth ability, but someone suddenly called out and told him to stop. He immediately paused his attack. The plants ran into the monster before they could pierce it, and the boy turned around, realizing it was the lady who called him. The girl was calling out to her people. She shouted and pointed at the giant cat. Her people instantly rushed toward it, quickly realizing what Fruz was planning. The flower people quickly ran up to the giant cat and surrounded it from all sides, making sure it had no way to escape. People bravely dodged attacks from the terrifying creature. While Leet tried to figure out what was happening and why he was being held, a chaotic battle raged all around him. The people carrying flowers were holding bowls filled with some kind of water. As they got closer, they all took a big sip together and then immediately sprayed the water right at the creature. Suddenly, the monster started to sway and slowly collapsed to the ground, its eyes gently closing as it fell. Finally, he collapsed onto the ground and fell into a deep sleep. Now, instead of looking like a terrifying monster, he seemed more like a fluffy kitten with big claws and sharp teeth, quietly snoring in his dreams. Lit realized that the flower people had slipped something into his wine, so he figured he was lucky that nothing worse happened. While the crowd cheered, Lit couldn't believe how quickly they had calmed the monster. Just then, Navi interrupted his thoughts and said they should finish the job now that they were here. In the Empire, the rule was simple: leave monsters alone and they'll attack again. That's why they were always wiped out right away, no questions asked. But now, the boy noticed something unusual and suddenly stopped in his tracks. The flower people surrounded the monster and tried to lift it, but it was too heavy, so they started shouting loudly to encourage themselves. Lit wasn't sure if they really wanted to send him back to the eastern mountains, so Fru explained that this cat actually guards the fields. He usually just eats berries and chases away animals that try to ruin them. As a reward, he was given a little drink. Maybe today he was extra hungry because he could smell meat so strongly. When he looked into their eyes, he seemed to understand something. Here they lived together in a kind of partnership, but the boy had just one choice: either get rid of them or fight back. That's exactly what he would have done if he was alone. For now, though, the flower people were dragging the animal along, struggling but making slow progress. Novi let out a deep sigh, knowing this was just the beginning, but she gathered her courage and told Lit she was counting on him since he was the eldest in the village. This made Lit lift his head with new determination. Her words clearly inspired him, and he agreed without hesitation. Then he rushed to the flower people to help them carry the giant cat to the eastern mountains. Lit turned around and invited Frau, Mia, and the sleepy Manmi to join them on their mission. To celebrate their village's safety, he suggested they all work together first, then enjoy a drink afterwards. A little later, when they were done, Lit sat by the window, lost in thought. Navi would handle the accounting, while Fran's people would take care of the fields and farms. The wholesale supplier will be the Golden Path Trading Guild, managed by Mia. For information-related matters, the Feather Wings Guild is in charge, especially Manma. The leader and main protector of this village is Sam Lit. The biggest problem is water. Right now, they survive thanks to spring water, but no one knows how long it will last. They can only grow crops that don't need much water, and even then, they can't grow a lot. The next challenge was finding good quality food. Frau is actually a great cook, but it all depends on the ingredients. Making dressings or sauces seemed a bit too hard for Litz, Suddenly, something really surprised him. He watched the flower pot on the windowsill with excitement. Something was starting to grow from the mysterious seed. A tiny sprout had broken through the soil. This plant is a monocot and feels incredibly light. If you look closely, you'll notice a beautiful blend of colors, shades of blue, purple, red, and orange. The colors shift smoothly from one to the next, creating a stunning and eye-catching effect. The boy thought it was the light of magic, even though he still had no idea what kind of plant it was. He gently touched the tiny sprout with his finger. Then he hugged the pot tightly, refusing to let it go. He really loved this beautiful pot and hoped the plant inside would grow quickly. Navi watched everything with a look of true surprise. She said it was disgusting, which scared the boy. Meanwhile, the village of Tohin is just beginning to grow, and the people there are willing to do anything to make their home better. At the same time, the strange axe-shaped seed has become a joke to X. Morning arrived and Frau woke up, slowly opening her eyes. When she wakes up, the first thing she does is eat breakfast. After that, she gets ready for the day. It looks like her hair is a little messy this morning. Today, the girl is working in the field. She and Lit, along with other villagers, are taking care of the orchard. She feels happy because there are more fruits this year than before. While everyone is taking a break and preparing drinks and juices, the girl and her friends have the most fun stomping on berries. It feels just like dancing. Then it was lunchtime. The girl told Lit that today they could eat the turnips they had planted last time. Lit happily asked if Frau really cooked all of this just for him and everyone else. After a hard day's work, lunch always tasted especially good. Then the flower people liked to take a short nap in the warm sunlight, enjoying how cozy it felt. But the trickster was full of energy and wasn't tired at all. Litten and Frau were just relaxing in the sun when the boy suddenly asked if flower people do photosynthesis. Navi thought that was a pretty rude question. Meanwhile, Frau just froze, still trying to figure out what all those words meant. The girl took out a book she really needed right now. It was called Frozen Surprise. The girl was holding a folk dictionary in her hands. Smiling, she said it was really important to her. Lit realized now why she understood their language so well. She must have learned it from the dictionary, but he still wondered where she got it. Prud admitted that a kind man gave it to her a long time ago. The boy wanted to ask who would do something like that, but before he could, something else happened that amazed him even more. The book had its owner's name written inside, which made Lit feel uneasy and afraid, while Navi remarked how terrible those times must have been. Frama quickly asked if everything was all right, and the boy thanked her for caring. The boy was really surprised when his master came to their village and even learned their language. It's thanks to his mentor that he can talk to Fru like this, and he really feels grateful for that. The girl just glanced at him shyly. Things used to be tough for her. She felt scared and sad. Everyone was sick and she didn't know what to do, but now everything is okay. People are smiling again, even Lit and his friends. The girl smiled brightly and said she felt really happy. Suddenly, the boy remembered that the cats were supposed to visit today, and just then, he noticed Mia waving hello to him. The young man asked where Manma was, and the cat admitted she left her behind because Manma didn't show up at the agreed time. Maybe Manma stayed up all night and overslept. Meanwhile, a young woman was running through the desert, holding a crying Manmu in her arms. She felt happy that she had found him, while the little cat kept apologizing and explaining that she had no other choice. They set off right away for the village of Tohin, eager to see everything with their own eyes. Lit suggested using special packaging for berry alcohol. He also recommended making a separate picture for each type of wine. Mia was happy with the idea. It was a great way to make the product stand out. She promised to talk to an artist from the guild about it. The guy realized the task wouldn't be hard, but it promised to be interesting. Suddenly, Navi interrupted their conversation. She had something less than pleasant to say. Another unexpected visitor was speeding toward them. Lit and Mia asked, sounding disappointed, if this was happening again, but the assistant quickly replied, annoyed, that she had nothing to do with it. But she still said that the owner knows him. The boy tried to see something far away, squinting into the distance. He hoped he didn't have any meetings planned for today. It looked like he noticed something, but the stranger was already at the gate, ready to come in. The girl climbed down from the beast she was riding, and it was impossible to miss the imperial family crest shining on her cloak. He realized that standing in front of him was none other than Her Majesty Adele, and behind her shyly followed Manma. Adele seemed really pleased to see him. The girl was so happy to see the boy that she picked him up and hugged him tightly. His back cracked loudly from the strong hug. Adele quickly apologized, feeling embarrassed. Meanwhile, Mia turned to Manma and asked who this girl was, but the cat just cried sadly and kept saying sorry, admitting she didn't know either. Pointing at Adele, Manma said that this imperial woman told her she wouldn't leave until she got an answer. The girl apologized for making fun of her and explained that it was all a misunderstanding. She had only heard that the cat was part of the Information Guild. Lit introduced everyone to a stranger. Her name was Adele la Romancia. She was the 6th princess of the Romancia Empire and the commander of the 15th Imperial Knight Legion. The girl waved excitedly when she saw Lit acting just like his usual self. The boy noticed too. It had been a long time since they last met. Meanwhile, the cats whispered to each other, saying this girl was way too scary to ever be a princess. Adele admitted she didn't know Lit was in the village, and it had been hard for her to find him. Just then, Frau, who was standing behind him, called out to the boy. The princess asked Lita to return to the imperial city so they could defeat the people who forced him out. She was determined to get revenge on the courtiers herself. Her words scared not only Frau, but even Lita himself. The girl insisted that only power mattered, arguing that strength and force are the same thing. The boy simply asked her not to hide violence behind fancy words, but the princess just lifted her chin with pride. The young man admitted he appreciated the care, but he had no plans to return to the imperial city. He just wanted a simple, normal life. Adele was honestly stunned by his decision. If he became an ordinary person, the world would be filled with lonely people, all dreaming of tearing everything down. That's what the princess believed. She thought Lit was too modest. He never showed off, even during the war, and always kept his name hidden. He said he was tired of this imperial city. At first, the princess pouted, but then she lowered her head sadly. She told him she understood, but the boy could sense she was just saying what he wanted to hear, especially as the princess was already reaching for her weapon. The girl drew her sword and charged at the furious Rickard, promising to do whatever it takes to bring him to the imperial capital. But within moments, the plants wrapped around her and took away her weapon, while Lit, not surprised at all, just looked at the girl silently. The princess looked up with excitement, thrilled because this was exactly what she had hoped for from Summer, but he couldn't understand why she was so happy. Lies jumped into the conversation and said that arguing is bad, so he suggested greeting the girl, even though Manma tried to stop him because she thought it could be dangerous. Adela was surprised she came back to return Litza, but everyone was happy to see her anyway, while the boy seemed lost in thought. Then he decided to ask the princess for a small favor. When she heard this, the girl actually looked happy, and a bit of color appeared on her cheeks. She listened to him carefully. They needed firewood for the party, but a tiger had recently appeared in the forest, so he asked Frau for help and protection. Actually, he asked for someone to go with him. You have to be careful in the forest because trees can fall unexpectedly. Adele was walking with the little girl, wondering why she was doing it since she barely had any time. In the capital of the empire, news of the exile reached One Valley a bit earlier than elsewhere, but still too late to change anything. It felt like a heavy weight had fallen on them. She couldn't believe it, especially since he had done so much for the empire's victory. The servant explained that some of the court wizards were unhappy. They thought he was treated better than he actually deserved. Adele gripped her fan tightly and thought that everyone probably envied his power or something like that. She knew that getting involved in court affairs was always a mistake, even if you really wanted to. The knights whispered quietly about how the princess had snapped the iron fan. Everyone thought she was a tough warrior princess, all strength and fierce temper, but just one angry glance from her was enough to make them fall silent right away. The girl tied her hair into a ponytail and told her maid to get a vehicle ready so they could go after Lido, but the maid apologized and said she couldn't do it. This weekend, the girl had plans to have dinner with Julian. It was an important meeting that could shape her future, so the staff advised her to think things over carefully one more time. The princess promised she would come back on time, but now she was walking through the woods with Frau, looking for firewood. Suddenly, Frau stopped, turned to the princess, and asked if she really was Princess Adele. The girl agreed and mentioned that she is also an honorary commander of the Empire's 15th Legion. Frode looked amazed and asked with excitement if Adele was really both a princess and a knight at the same time. At first, the girl didn't get why he was so surprised, but then she smiled. She grabbed a stick and started waving it around, and then Adele explained that even if it looked a bit odd, she still managed to keep her style. Maybe not as stylish as Lit, but stylish enough. Frau clapped her hands happily, enjoying the show. Frau asked if the princess and Lit were friends. At first, the princess hesitated, but then blushed and admitted she thought their feelings for each other were much deeper than friendship. This guy is her partner in battle, the only one who fought by her side and watched her back. Because of that, she felt their bond was stronger than just regular friendship. Later, Frau asked if it was true that they were really that close. When the girl agreed, the flower child smiled and said that now they could be friends too. But Adele looked away sadly. She didn't want to upset Liz, but she knew she had to give it back because it was the right thing to do. Adele remembered someone once told her, "A girl shouldn't trust strangers, she deserves better." and if he really cares, he'll do the right thing. Suddenly, a loud scream cut her off. A dead tree was crashing down straight toward Fru, who was frozen in fear. The princess realized she was running out of time and couldn't get anything done, while Frau calmly reached out her hand as if she was about to catch the tree. But Adele reacted quickly and managed to catch the huge tree trunk that was about to hit the little girl. A moment later, Lit and Nami watched in amazement as the tree began to crack and split open. Everyone was shocked when they saw a huge tree lying behind the girls, but what amazed them even more was that Adele was breaking the tree into logs with her bare hands. The guy noticed that even after the war, the girl kept working on her skills because she has always been hardworking. He saw his friend pick up a small branch and gaze at the princess with excitement. It really seemed like the girl admired her. Now Adelia had a new fan. The princess cheered Frodo on as he struggled to break the branch, but he just couldn't do it. Meanwhile, Lit watched and simply hoped that Adele would like the village too. Everyone was having a good time and enjoying delicious wine, but Adele sat quietly by herself, just watching the others. Suddenly, Fru came over and invited her to have a snack. At first, the princess said no because she had brought some food with her, but she quickly changed her mind when she found out that the meal was prepared by Lit himself. The girl took a good look at what she was given. Even though it was quite fatty, it smelled delicious, so she decided to give it a try. She took a bite, tasted it, and realized it was delicious. Frau was happy to see that the girl liked it. She also thanked Adele for her earlier help. The princess replied that she was just doing her job as an escort, but accepted the thanks anyway and gave her a shy smile. Suddenly, Lit sat down next to the girls. He asked one of them if life was really as great as it seemed for them. She looked away, thinking about how to answer. The princess blushed, looked away, and agreed, since she rarely experienced anything like this. Lit admitted that he feels connected to her, and that's why this place looks even more beautiful to him. Adele asked if it's because the Empire isn't as pretty as this. The girl lowered her head and apologized, feeling like she might be the reason he was struggling in court. Some people say the princess shouldn't stay by his side. But she promised that she wouldn't put up with this nonsense anymore and would do her best to create a comfortable environment for him. The young woman gave a respectful bow and kindly asked Letta to come back to the Empire. She understood and honestly admitted that losing his talent would hurt just as much as losing 100 years of the Empire's history. Then Lit asked if this was exactly what Her Highness Princess Adele wanted to say. The girl lifted her head and said she was born a princess. She couldn't become a knight unless she kept doing what was best for her kingdom. The young man apologized, but he still refused to go back to the city. He really enjoys growing plants here, collecting firewood, not worrying about anything, and just living peacefully in nature, but still. He thanked Adele for coming to see him. Hearing this made her smile with happiness. The shy girl covered her face with her hands and quietly said that she would leave here first thing in the morning. But she made a promise to never give up. One day, she'll come back and bring hope and light to the heart of the Empire again. The young man smiled and agreed, but joked that it could only happen after they have another barbecue together. The girl blushed and said she would come back as soon as she finished what she needed to do. He asked why the girl was in such a hurry, and she told him she had important plans she couldn't miss. The summer breeze stretched and said it was definitely time for the girl to go to sleep. As he was about to leave, she shyly asked if there was really only one house here. The girl couldn't sleep in the same spot as the boy. He realized she'd been raised like a real princess and probably already had a plan in mind. Anyway, he was already thinking about building a guest house, so he went ahead and did it, and then he wished the girl good night. Soon after, the animal that the princess approached was being untied from the gate. Lit noticed this and remembered what the girl said. He wondered, if she talked about the morning, why is she leaving so late at night? It was still far from midnight, but Adele, already half asleep, was climbing onto her monster. Lit, who was still awake, noticed her but decided not to disturb the girl. Meanwhile, in the forest by the lake, a giant cat was relaxing and drinking crystal-clear water. Right in front of him stood a strange stone with a mysterious symbol carved into its surface. A bit later, in the capital of the Empire, a man explained that taxes in Craig's lands had been raised as high as possible. The rulers started using people's debts for their own benefit, treating them like a shield. After all, if you know how to handle people, they become very useful tools. He said he runs his land the way he wants, just like the Craigs have always done. His companion commented with interest that the family is especially skilled at taking advantage of fools. As he got into the carriage, the man said goodbye to the princess and told her he would be eagerly waiting for Adelio's reply. As the carriage drove away, Adele's brother watched it disappear. He urged his sister to make up her mind quickly, reminding her that this man holds a very important position in the Empire. He used to be the one in charge of the Craig lands. The girl lay in the bathtub, staring up at the ceiling. She felt annoyed by his strength, stubborn personality, and his constant bragging about how loyal and amazing he was. She remembered that she used to have much more fun in the village of Tohan than she does here. A bit later, back in the village, the trickster confessed she wanted to apologize, but what shocked Leto even more wasn't the apology, it was that the girl actually knew such big words. The boy asked what was wrong, and the girl lowered her head sadly. She admitted that she had said something unpleasant to Adele. The young man was surprised she said that, so he sat down next to her and asked exactly what words she had used. She remembered how she once said she missed Master Leto, but now she couldn't find the words to say anything at all. The girl didn't dare say anything and just lowered her head even more, but the boy reassured her, saying, "Adele won't mind, so there's no need to apologize." He explained that words can't always express everything. It's often better to show your intentions through your actions, especially when it comes to relationships with others. Frode noticed it was already late because the princess had left. Lit told him not to worry about it. He said he got the news this morning and quickly noticed that something was wrong. It turned out to be just a mistake. The princess happily waved her hands in the air. The girl realized she had arrived way too early and rushed over to Lit, begging him to return to the capital. Meanwhile, Navi figured out that even with a fast train, a round trip would take 8 days. Lit also pointed out that the princess had only left 7 days ago. Adele admitted that when he gets tired, she has a special way to help him. She just gives him a piggyback ride. While they talked about this, Frau watched them from the side. She was about to walk over to Adele and say something, but Lit interrupted her. He took out some flowers and gave them to Adele with a warm smile. The girl was really happy to get such a gift, but then she suddenly got shy, and after that, frightened, she fell to the ground. Let's sit across from the princess. He admitted she was beautiful. She fell asleep when someone touched her finger. The boy did this on purpose because he knew Adele often exaggerates. He asked if she could speak to the princess when she woke up, and the girl eagerly and confidently agreed. The boy went to make dinner, while Frav quickly called Navi. Meanwhile, the princess seemed troubled by nightmares from her past. Sitting beside the broken carriage, the little girl gazed up at a magical symbol glowing in the sky. After lots of hard work and careful preparation, Adele finally passed the orders test. She promised herself that on her very first night as part of the Imperial Guard, she would truly be worthy of this honor. She remembered the times when, as a knight, she comforted people and promised to keep them safe. People told her that monsters never came to places like this, and they always questioned how a woman could ever become a knight. Everyone seemed sure she would always be just a spoiled little girl. But then she remembered what Litz had said on the battlefield. He promised to handle this problem himself, telling her she'd already done enough. Litz believed in her strength, and that was exactly what she needed to hear at the time. Everything has changed. Now the girl kept replaying her conversation with her brother in her mind, remembering how he asked her how much longer she planned to stay up at night, since the war was already over. Her brother admitted that he was tired of everything and even made her an honorary commander. She wasn't a strong knight, so she asked again, surprised and a bit annoyed, what was all this supposed to mean? He had found a wonderful groom for her. It seemed like the perfect match for the princess, but suddenly Adele opened her eyes. She was lying on the bed in the middle of the room, surrounded by flowers and plants, with her swords resting nearby. The princess suddenly woke up with a start, realizing the sun was still high and she was still in bed. She realized that Lit cared about her by using flowers to help her feel less tired. At first, Adele thought she really needed a break, but then, all of a sudden, she jumped up and started doing some exercises, deciding it was the perfect moment to get moving. Soon, the princess found herself in the forest. She planned to collect healing herbs and also get some work done. Winter was coming, and nobody wanted to be left without firewood. But the girl was filled with doubts. She knew she was just running away, and deep down, she felt that leaving like this in the middle of the night wasn't right. But if she didn't return to the capital, nothing terrible would happen. Besides, Adele herself didn't really want to go back there. This made her feel confused, but deep down, she sensed that something wasn't right. The princess felt like someone was watching her, and she thought it must be the monster. No matter how hard she looked around, she just couldn't spot it anywhere. Maybe she just imagined it. Suddenly, Frau appeared in front of the princess and asked if she was all right. She woke up very early, but Adela said she was feeling fine now. Hearing this, Frau Bry let out a sigh of relief and admitted she was glad to hear it. The princess reassured Frau that there was nothing to worry about. She promised she wouldn't take any medicine today. She blushed and said she really liked the village of Tohan, which is why she decided to come back. Honestly, the girl herself wouldn't mind living here. The scammer was caught off guard by this and looked at her in surprise, calling her by name. But suddenly, something strange happened. The whole forest began to shake. Adele turned around and saw giant sprouts growing. She instantly realized this was Lita's magic, quickly apologized, and was the first to run back to the village. She left Frau behind, full of determination. Everyday items were scattered everywhere. A giant cat was smashing things as it moved towards the lighthouse. The boy looked at Novians in surprise and asked if the creature had become stronger. The assistant quickly scanned it and confirmed that its magical power had definitely increased. But why did he choose this village if there was no meat being prepared today? Lito had no chance of catching him now and only needed to get rid of the cat. However, he still asked if the flower people had any metabai wine. The answer was no. Navi explained that the reason for this is a shortage of water. Recently, some of the water has been redirected to deliver berry wine. Lit froze for a moment, finally understanding what was going on. He looked at the monster threatening his home and realized it was all his fault. Suddenly, Adele called out to him. She wanted to help, but the boy asked her not to get rid of the cat. He told her to save the people first because it was too dangerous to stay. Time was running out, so the girl decided to follow his order. The girl skillfully dodged the monster's attacks and distracted it by throwing stones, giving her enough time to rescue the flower people. She carried them to safety, then came back and told everyone to rescue more people. She realized she was facing a powerful monster, but compared to the enemies they had battled before, this actually seemed like good news. The girl tripped right in front of the cat and fell. Her head started spinning, and everything looked blurry. It felt like she had been running for too long, and now her body was giving up. Still, she knew she had to look out for others, no matter how she felt. Right in front of her, Fraha suddenly showed up, carrying a bucket filled with something mysterious. The girl called out Frusa's name in surprise, but Frusa didn't even turn around. It was clear that she was lost in thought. She dumped everything from the bucket right onto the cat, just as it was baring its teeth and getting ready to attack. The Lit and Navi were surprised by these actions, since they were sure there was no Matatabi wine left. Still, it worked. Adele told Frode to run and assured him she would be fine. But the girl refused, saying she didn't want to because now it was her turn to protect the princess. Adele remembered a time when she cried her heart out in front of the girl who once saved her life. She gently stroked her head, telling her to stop crying. She said that next time she might need to protect someone else, so there's no time for tears right now. As she walked away, the boy she once told not to lie or be lazy started to follow her. He tried to assure her that he was keeping the monsters under control, and it looked like he really was, but the princess had no idea about it. Adele couldn't believe she had forgotten something so important. Meanwhile, Lit knew he couldn't wait any longer. 2 lives depended on him. But suddenly he froze, clutching the seeds tightly in his hand. He had just seen something unbelievable. Frode stood with her arms spread wide, shielding Adele who sat behind her. Even when the cat raised its paw to strike, the girl didn't move back. She just squeezed her eyes shut tightly. Suddenly, Adele stood up and bravely pushed away the monster's paw with one hand as it came at them. Even the kitten was surprised by her courage. Adele looked into its eyes with confidence and said she thought she finally understood something. She hit the cat back and it dropped instantly. This surprised everyone watching, even Frau, who was covered in lettuce plants. Adele gave the cat a stern look and firmly told him to stand up. The boys felt even more confused by what they saw, but the princess wasn't done. She boldly declared that she would prove who was really in charge. She defeated the monster. Anyone confused? She explained she just wanted to see what he could do. The girl decided to keep him around until the cat got tired. She acted even though she believed she was just a girl, just a princess, as if life was just a game and she was too weak. But every move she made showed there was something stronger inside her than just the will to survive. This feeling is anger. She was mad at herself for getting lost in small arguments. She should always remember that she is a knight, standing strong to protect her people. She grabbed the cat by its tail and threw it to the ground, not giving it a chance. The girl was tired of being treated like a princess who always needed protection, and she had just proved to herself that she could do much more than anyone expected. Everyone was stunned when the defeated monster lay motionless next to the princess. Only Lid realized the truth. Even though Adele had warned that it was dangerous, no one could match her in close combat. She was clearly the strongest of them all. A little later, the flower people took the cat back to the eastern mountains, and Frau, finally gathering her courage, walked up to Adele and apologized. This surprised the princess a lot. Frau admitted she was rude to Adele because she thought Adele would take Master Lid away from her, but the princess didn't understand what was going on, so she just turned away. But after thinking for a moment, she looked at Frau and said they were comrades. Frau agreed. Now, she and the princess were true friends. An awkward silence filled the room, so Adele broke it by saying she was happy to meet Frau. Adele suggested they should start talking more casually, pointing out that the girl was still being a bit too formal with her. Lit watched Frau and Adele laughing together and thought that the girl replied so politely she probably couldn't talk any other way now. At the same time, Lit noticed that Frau was actually very pretty. Then he said it was time for dinner before cleaning up, and today he wanted to add his own special spice. After that, he asked where the cooking utensils were kept. It turned out that this was exactly why the tiger came. Lit asked the flower people if they knew anything about it, but Navi explained everything. She asked him not to share his spices with anyone else ever again. In the morning, after the sun had risen, the princess got ready to go home. Frau warned her to be careful, and Adele thanked her for all her help. The girl paused for a moment and then turned to the young man. Right away, he said he had no plans to go to the capital, but that wasn't what the girl wanted to talk about. She gave a polite bow, thanked Li once more for helping the Empire of Romance during the century-long war against the demons, and apologized for her poor manners back in Tagan village. She admitted to herself that she knew he could never be happy in the imperial capital, yet she was the one who sent him away, and now she had the nerve to come back. Looking back, it all felt so foolish, just a result of her own weakness and naivety. But even so, she couldn't change what happened. She really didn't want to leave without saying goodbye. Lit froze, surprised by Adele's words. The boy apologized too, and the girl said she understood. She decided to say goodbye, but only for a little while. She confidently announced that from now on, she would follow her own path and wished her mentor good luck. Smiling, he thanked the little girl and told her that if she ever felt tired, she was always welcome to come and rest with them. They would be very happy to see her. At first, the girl simply smiled back at him. But tears welled up in her eyes, and she promised Lita she would visit them often. The boy agreed and reassured her. The princess, her eyes still wet from crying, wished everyone a wonderful day. That's when she escaped to the Empire, determined to keep fighting. Adele never backs down, even when others give up. The boy noticed that the princess had always been strong, and nothing ever seemed to shake her. The determined young man realized he could no longer run away. It was his responsibility to protect the village. He needed to deal with the angry tiger and the water shortage as soon as possible. Looking up at the mountain, he wondered what was really happening up there. Lit noticed that Frau was thoughtfully watching Adele as she drove away. Then he asked her if she wanted to go for a walk. The girl spoke to the boy politely and gently tried to turn him down. Then he realized everything and said he would have business in the city next time. He asked if Trickster wanted to join him. Some time later, in the imperial lands ruled by Craig, a servant of Julian arrived. He brought news from Princess Adelia. Craig asked if she had finally agreed to marry him, noticing that her answer had taken longer than usual this time. The servant explained that, in short, they were turned down, and it was written in big, bold letters. The princess hasn't arrived in the Empire yet. Right now, she's resting somewhere near the village of Tagan. The girl stretched, glanced at the bright sunrise, and realized it was time to truly start living. They planted different kinds of berries, grapes, potatoes, and turnips that don't need much watering. They also built cozy guest houses. Everything looked really beautiful and inviting. Lit smiled with satisfaction and wiped the sweat from his forehead after planting a tree. He transplanted his mysterious plant X into the soil. It started as a seed, then grew into a sprout, turned into a small seedling, and now it's finally time to plant it in the ground. This means the plant is growing well, and the boy is really happy about it. Honestly, he felt a bit nervous about this mysterious plant, but out loud, he just hoped it would grow well. Navi noticed that this month, his earnings and spending from red berries, juice, harvests, and other work were much higher than what he made as a court mage. You could say the village of Tagan got off to a great start. Their harvest turned out great, but there hasn't been any rain since summer began. It's odd, and clearly there's a water problem. Still, the plants are growing so fast that Lit can barely keep up with them. But we need to fix the water problem as soon as possible. So, we head into the city to get what we need and explore the area at the same time. Frau spoke with her mom, who asked her to be careful, but Frau reassured her that everything would be fine. The girl put on her cloak and grabbed a dictionary. She apologized for taking so long to get ready, but Lit told her he'd just finished preparing as well. Then he suggested they walk together for a bit to the spot where they'd meet the transport guild. Frau agreed, and the boy mentioned he hadn't been to the city in a long time, so he set off on his journey. After a while, they were sitting in the carriage. The girl who owned it recognized Lit and said she was glad to see he was okay. The boy greeted Mel too and mentioned that she looked nice today. The woman asked the girl her name again, then calmly told her there was nothing to worry about. After all, Mel is a member of the Transport Guild, and that guild is connected to Mia. The girl noticed that girls seemed to really like Lit, but he nervously told Mel not to say silly things, especially around Fru, and laughed it off. She added that their friends would only arrive tomorrow morning, so it would be best for them to get some rest now. Navi and Lit noticed Fra flipping through her dictionary. Right away, the assistant realized the girl was definitely feeling anxious. He explained that after Adele left, it became harder for her to understand what was going on around her. He thought the girl just needed a little help to adjust, but it was important not to put her in situations that were too risky. The guys finally showed up, and Mel wished them a great day, reminding them about their evening plans. At first, they suggest grabbing a map, but quickly notice Frode looking even more anxious than before. Navi notices too, but Frode reassures both girls and suggests they get going. As they walked through the city, the girl seemed scared of the people passing by and looked like she might cry, but then Lit suddenly called out to her. They walked into the flower shop, and the staff greeted them with friendly smiles. Lit was surprised to see that the selection of flowers was much bigger than he expected. He pointed to the plant and told the girl it was called Friarens. Its scent was so wonderful that people started using it instead of perfume. Even Frau mentioned how nice it smelled. The young man excitedly told the girl about different plants, about grapes, the flexible vines you can even use to make ropes, and lots of other interesting plants. The shopkeeper noticed that Lit knew a lot about plants and invited them to come inside. When the boy saw the unusual plant, he was surprised and asked what it was, since he had never seen anything like it before. The shop assistant explained that some of these plants don't grow in the city, like the greenhouse lily that caught Lita's attention. The woman who was watching started to giggle softly. Then the boy turned to her and asked if she was feeling calmer now. Talking about fraud, he mentioned that the world isn't actually as bad as people say. He only realized this himself not too long ago. The girls smiled and agreed with him. The boy then spotted a glowing flower in the dark and decided that they should definitely take it with them. When the lady asked if she could take her bag, the young man said yes. He thanked the girl for agreeing to join him, and she promised, with a smile, to take great care of her new bag. The meeting time was getting closer, and Navi noticed they had been watched since early morning. The boy then asked if there was any way to avoid being followed. Navi started drawing a map and said to turn right after 300 meters, then turn left after another 50 meters. Lit grabbed Fro by the shoulders and hurried him along, saying they needed to move faster. But it wasn't just them who sped up. Lit asked Navi about the situation, and she reported that the enemy was already just 50 meters away. Lit and Frau turned the corner, and when their pursuers arrived, they were surprised to find no one there, only fresh grass beginning to grow under their feet. The net dropped right on top of their pursuers' heads, while their friend watched from above to see who had been following them all day. To their surprise, it was Manma along with a girl they didn't recognize. Mia apologized to Lit for what happened. She explained that the girl is Diaz from the Artists Guild. Here, everyone calls her the goddess of the paintbrush. She's the one they asked to design the bottle labels. Diaz might not be the most modest person, but her art is absolutely amazing. But she said she can't draw the label until she sees a proper sample. Also, Manma admitted that she likes doing interviews face-to-face. The young man let out a sigh of relief. Diaz said she was ready to start painting, but asked Frode to take off her hood first. The girl seemed surprised, and Lita looked a bit upset about it. He replied that the girl wouldn't agree, and Diaz said the portrait on the label should be connected with the flower people. If Frau didn't like this idea, the artist wouldn't paint it. It was their decision to make. Then Frau took off her hood with confidence and said that if Diaz is a friend of their friends and smells as good as he does, he must be trustworthy. Diaz was amazed by how beautiful the girl was. She asked her to sit down and smile so she could paint her portrait. Frau forced a smile, but Lit could tell right away that something was wrong. He suggested she remember the store they were in. Today, the girl remembered her new bag and the beautiful flowers, and a genuine smile lit up her face. While Diaz focused on her drawing, the boy quietly watched her work. Frau remembers looking at herself in the mirror with her new bag that Lit bought for her. Suddenly, Diaz put down her pencil. The drawing was finished. In it, Frau had a soft blush on her cheeks and a gentle smile, her eyes closed peacefully. When she finished her work, the tired cats were already fast asleep, cuddled up together. The Fraunlits were very happy with the work and thanked Diaz for his help. The girl shared that ever since she was a child, she dreamed of meeting someone from the flower people after reading about them in a book, and she felt truly grateful for getting this chance. The guys were about to leave and said they couldn't wait to see the finished bottles. Diaz mentioned she had prepared something special for them. As the group was heading back to Tagan village, Let thanked Froggen for coming with him to the city. She smiled and said she'd really enjoyed the trip. She clenched her fists and said they absolutely had to go back there, and the guy replied that they would definitely take a walk there together again. When Frau fell asleep, Lit asked Navi to give a report on the situation, and the girl appeared right away, saying she was already doing it. She carefully rechecked the area between Tagan village and the city, walking within a 1 kilometer radius, which made the map much more accurate. About 20 kilometers outside the city, the land slowly becomes less green. Just 30 kilometers away, all the plants disappear. Navi explained that only the greenery dies within a certain distance from the village, and it looks very strange and unnatural. There were no signs of a water shortage anywhere in the city, so it seemed like the problem was only happening near their place. Lit remembered the shop owner telling him today how his great-grandfather used to say that this place was once full of greenery, but then, all of a sudden, the water disappeared and stopped coming here. Navi added that the sea is about 30 kilometers west of the village. The boy replied that even his magic couldn't cover such a long distance. Still, Lit pointed out that he had prepared everything they'd need and insisted they should try every option possible. A month later, in the capital city of the empire, the cat was happily celebrating their victory. Not only did the Frau bottles become popular, but other labels caught people's attention too. Sales started rising quickly. The girl suggested they try making a few more batches with different varieties. She was really excited about her label project and said they were lucky to come up with such a great idea. But a man standing nearby kept watching her closely and told his servant to keep an eye on that cat. In the capital, a secret meeting took place to talk about Lif. It had been 6 months since he left, and on the surface, there didn't seem to be any reason to worry. However, no one knows where he is now. He disappeared without a trace. That's not surprising, though, because he's an expert at vanishing. He's not someone who seeks attention or chases after wealth. People who want money or fame are easy to control, but this man made them uneasy. Still, they chose to leave him alone. Now that the war is over and they have won, their empire doesn't need heroes anymore. Since he's no longer in the way, they can just let him go. One of the men asked him about his research, but when they found out it was about plants, none of them seemed interested. Meanwhile, one member of the council started thinking about something completely different. He wondered if it would be better if their princess acted more like everyone else. Meanwhile, somewhere else, the soldiers were talking about why the princess had come to the guild's area. They guessed she might be upset about the war, but they still couldn't figure out why she kept coming back there. They figured Rickelt was probably to blame again, since she was always looking for him. Meanwhile, the girl herself was in the locked archives. She ran along the shelves and cupboards with a flashlight, almost like she was dancing in the dark. A young woman in a light dress and high heels smiled to herself, remembering something nice while searching for some important papers, even though taking them was strictly forbidden. Lid asked her for a favor. He wanted her to find something out for him. Normally, the girl didn't visit the library, but today was different. Right away, what caught her eye was just how dusty everything was. The girl finally discovered the book she needed, Abigail the Collector's Magical Shopping List, filled with rare and mysterious artifacts. She took out the book and started reading it carefully. Most of the magical artifacts from the Forbidden Archives were said to be bought by this very man. She looked through the records from different years and months until she found an entry about someone purchasing seeds on July 17, 2017. What she discovered truly shocked her. A week later, in the village of Taganlit, he stomped angrily on the ground, completely confused about where all the water had gone. It had been a month since he last visited the city. In that time, he tried many different ways to fix the water shortage, but none of them worked. Summer had begun, and there was still no water. The boy realized things couldn't go on like this. Adele walked up to the tired boy, thanked him for his hard work, and brought him a tray of food. She brought the boy his food and reminded him that taking breaks is important, too. She gave him some chicken soup and ham, and that's when the hungry boy realized it was already noon. He thanked the princess and apologized for making her do something during her vacation, but she didn't mind at all. He said the meal was delicious, as always. She made amazing chicken, even though Lit had never seen her cook anything else. The girl started sharing the information the boy had asked her to find. He immediately wanted to know what she had discovered. She explained that she found everything at the city library. Then, pointing to a small sprout, she asked if that was the mysterious tree they'd been talking about. The princess gently touched the leaves, but suddenly a noise came from behind the boys, and Lit quickly turned around to see what had happened. Frau rushed in and announced that a tiger had just arrived and was standing right behind her. The boy was surprised, because ever since Adele had chased the tiger away, it hadn't come back. Lit knew he couldn't let him do whatever he wanted anymore, so he bought special seeds to help catch monsters in the city. Navi flew in and apologized, explaining that, for some reason, no one had noticed her. The princess stood up, asked Lit to stop, and walked over to them. She stopped in front of the tiger and asked if he had anything to say to her. Adele and the giant cat stared silently into each other's eyes. The animal bowed its head down to the girl's feet. Everyone froze in surprise, but the princess understood what he wanted. She turned to the others and said that the tiger was asking them to follow him. Lit, drenched in sweat, stopped to catch his breath. The boys were following the tiger up the mountain, having no idea where it was taking them. It had already been 2 hours since they entered the eastern mountains. Then Navi reminded everyone that they were only slow because the owner was walking too slowly. Fra told her not to worry about it, but Adele interrupted, saying they had already arrived. Lit was surprised because there was nothing around. Then he asked if the princess really understood the tiger. She told the girls that she understood it a little bit. Maybe she just has a special gift. Suddenly, everything started shaking. Flowers and Frau's hair began to bloom. Navi said there was a magical reaction happening ahead. A descendant of magic was coming their way. Suddenly, the trees in front of the group move aside, forming a natural archway. The trees parted, revealing a path that led straight to the lake where the magical stone was waiting. Lit was amazed to discover a place like this had existed in the mountains all along. Navi explained that the air here was completely filled with magic. The girl also explained that magic in the air makes magical creatures even stronger. Adelia mentioned that this is why the Frau flowers started to glow. It's the perfect place to admire them. But Frau just asked what these flowers actually are. The princess explained that it's when people enjoy looking at beautiful flowers and spend time together. The girl thought it sounded nice, but she asked them not to do it just for her. Lit felt nervous. This was a secret area, probably blocked off, which is why the navigator couldn't locate it. But for the boy, it all seemed really exciting. You take a careful look at the stone slab. The pattern on it looks familiar to you. As he looked around, he realized he was standing in a place that felt ancient and full of history. And this tiger climbing up the rock was his protector. The boy had tried several spells, but the stone slab didn't react at all. Yes, Navi, she shared her thoughts about this stream. The girl said she believes there's a gentle but pure magical energy in this water. That's why the water is not only good for plants, but it's also helpful for people. But this stream is too small and shallow, so it can't solve the water problem in Token Village. Even if they use it, it will only help for a short time because it will dry up quickly. Navi realized there was no way to solve the water problem in the village, and building a water channel would be too difficult even for the Lits. The boy agreed, feeling disappointed. Then he asked about the stone slab, but the girl replied that she had no information about it in her database. She also said it might be an entrance to an underground dungeon with monsters, so touching the slab without getting ready first could be very dangerous. The guy sat down and told the girl that the drawing looked really familiar to him, and even if it was a trick, he was sure he could handle it. Now he was ready to take any chance he got. Lit felt a bit sad but quickly calmed down. He called for Frau and Adele because it was getting dark and it was time to go home. They all agreed they'd had enough adventure for today. He collected a small sample of this water, hoping it might help fix the water problem. They still haven't found anything out. Frau suggested leaving with Lit even at night, but he thanked her and said no, telling them it's better to get home earlier. It's time to throw a party and welcome our new friend. The boys returned to Tagan village with the tiger, and the flower people were overjoyed to see it. Lit watched in awe, completely frozen. This huge cat seemed incredibly cool to him. Then he turned to Adele and asked what the tiger's name was. The girl said his name is Nusi, and he is the forest's guardian. The princess said the guy made it pretty clear he wanted to be her favorite, so she decided to give him a name. The guy pointed out that Adele chose a very basic and ordinary name. Everyone was happy about their new friend, and the boy petted him and said he was glad to meet him. A happy tiger greeted the boy with a big, sloppy lick. The boy, now covered in tiger drool, didn't look too thrilled about this friendly gesture. Navi and her boyfriend watched the fun from the sidelines. She noticed that things were getting even louder and more exciting around them. Monmar and the others joined them too, though Leet didn't notice when they arrived. Still, as the village chief, he was simply happy to welcome more guests. Seeing that Lit's face had become serious again, Navi asked if he was still worried about the water problem. The guy stretched wearily and agreed, wondering out loud what else they could try. Suddenly, Adele walked over and asked Lit if he had a minute to keep talking about what she had found out. He quickly stood up, almost like he had forgotten all about it. Then he asked her if she had found out anything about the mysterious tree and waited anxiously for her answer. The girl said this is the tree of life, and she thinks it's an ash tree. Lit was amazed. How could such a tiny baby become the most incredible thing in the whole world? Adele had only heard about him in fairy tales when she was a child. Long ago, in the very center of the world, there stood a great world tree. Spirits sang and danced in the sky, the air was fresh, and clear streams flowed everywhere. Every living being was full of magical energy, and the world was full of happiness and abundance. But one day, the world tree disappeared. After that, magic slowly faded from the air, and the spirits vanished too. All that was left for people was sadness and conflict. This is the story of the world tree, a legend known only to the royal family in those days. Adelia shared that, according to the information she received, the seeds were silver and the sprout glowed with rainbow light. Everything happened just like in the old legend. Litz claimed he was growing a monocot plant, while the world tree was a dicot ash tree, but there was nothing about his plant that actually showed it was a monocot. For a regular plant, that's just not possible. The guy thought it was just someone copying, but actually, that wasn't the whole story. There's a man known as Collector Abigail. He travels from country to country, buying odd and mysterious things. He also works as a royal mage. One day, his shopping list included a very strange item. For some reason, he thought the seeds were fake and left them in the room with other useless things. Lit was amazed at how skilled the princesses were at gathering information. Still, she noticed that they were the ones who truly deserved admiration. Thanks to him, the village of Tagan saw a new world tree grow for the first time in thousands of years. The boy screamed in fear, realizing that this tree would bring too much attention to their village, and he started blaming himself for being too curious. Suddenly, he realized that if the water problem wasn't solved, the world tree could die. While everyone else seemed happy, he was the only one worried about it. He sat down with his legs crossed and started to think. There's not much water, the stream is strange, the statue is unusual, and now there's the world tree, the problems just keep getting bigger. But Lit pulled himself together, gave his cheeks a little slap, and told himself not to panic. After all, he's the village chief. The guy asked Navi to collect a sample of water from the stream and check it. The girl wondered why he was in such a hurry, but he explained that he wanted to activate the monument as soon as possible because they really needed any clue they could get. Lit believed the monument and the stream would solve the water shortage problem. Suddenly, Monma rushed over to Lit and asked if they wanted a drink. Lit noticed right away that she was really drunk. Another guy pushed her away and told her to move along. Mom quietly grumbled about being offended, and even the guy felt a bit awkward because of it. Still, Mia decided to stay with Lyot and asked if he was free. The guy apologized and said he was busy. The girl understood what the boy said, but it clearly upset her, and she looked away sadly. Then Lit promised he would find time to talk to Mia. Suddenly, Manmi's voice rang out. She hurried over, holding a jug of fresh spring water, and said this water would help everyone think more clearly, which was very important. But then Lit shouted that drinking this water was a bad idea, which scared the cat nearby. She landed gently, and all the water spilled right onto the world tree. Lit froze in fear as he watched the water slowly drip down the tree, and they didn't even have time to figure out what kind of water it was. The next morning, Frau noticed that Lit hadn't slept at all and asked him, a bit worried, if everything was okay. The boy spent the whole night under a tree, wrapped in a blanket. In the morning, he greeted the girl and explained he watched over the baby all night because he was worried. But the guy still believed he was fine and that he just needed a little more attention, and that's when Navi showed up. The girl said she would take care of him since Lit needed some rest. The boy wanted to protest, but Navi gave him a serious look. She leaned close to the village chief, looking serious, and told him he was overthinking things since she already said she would help. Then she asked firmly if he understood her, and he quickly nodded in agreement. Lit thanked Navi for her help and asked Rao to take care of the other fields. Rao smiled and promised she would handle everything perfectly. Lying on his bed, the boy felt totally exhausted after yesterday's mountain hike, but he was also really curious about what Mia wanted to talk to him about. Then he decided that he would definitely ask her about it later. The cats returned to the city feeling sad. Manma couldn't believe what she had done, and she knew Lit would definitely be angry. But when she noticed that Mia looked upset too, the girl decided to ask what was wrong. That's when Mia admitted that she wanted to ask Glit for advice, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. Just 4 days ago, something interesting happened in the capital of the empire. Mia was relaxing and celebrating her victory in the economic battle, fully confident that the largest independent guild was already waiting for her. Suddenly, a man walked up to the cat and noticed that she looked healthy and well. He introduced himself as a member of the Maiden's Goblet Guild, a group that studies forbidden substances. The girl took off her glasses, surprised to see that this guild was the top group for researchers. She invited the man to take a seat. He thanked her and gave her a gift. He explained that they learned about a merchant selling red berries who suddenly appeared in the autonomous region, and his goods were selling out almost instantly. Mia explained that everything worked out because she managed to sign a contract with a pharmaceutical company and called it pure luck. The man simply replied that she shouldn't downplay her own achievements. Grandpa knows this is a big favor, but he kindly asks for your help. The girl is surprised when she finds out it's not about baskets, but actually 100 boxes. The old man points to a document showing an order for 100 boxes and explains that each box contains 10 baskets. Manmer knows this means 1,000 baskets. That's 10 times more than the usual amount. She says sorry for the misunderstanding, but Grandpa explains that it's too late to cancel the order now. The old man says they've already got everything ready to move the goods, and warns that if the girl doesn't do her part, they might stop trusting her. He warns that the future of the Hero Guild is in serious danger. Grandpa says he hopes to get the package within 10 days. She also remembers once spilling water while a bit tipsy, but insists it wasn't her fault. He asks how much time is left until the deadline, and the girl tells him there are only 6 days to go. The hero realizes he needs to go back to the village and ask Mr. Ritt for help. The main character isn't sure if she can always rely on her owner, because he has his own things to worry about. She believes that this time, the master will be able to help. Manma points out that the village of Torjan won't be able to gather enough red berries, and also mentions that there isn't enough water, either. The main character suggests it would be a great idea to collect a book of stories all about the village of Torjan. She thinks that if she hadn't drunk back then, she wouldn't have this problem now. One of the girls suggests everyone try a special donut she made herself. Reet finds out that a visitor from the village of Torjan has arrived to see him. He asks if the guest has any plans for today. Mom feels sorry about everything that happened recently. She says she often causes trouble. The hero sees that the tree is actually fine, but doesn't get why it looks that way. A little girl holds out her notebook, asking for help. Reed flips through the notebook and notices it's full of spells for opening, closing, and all sorts of actions. He sees that the book is really organized and easy to follow. Men says she needs to collect 900 baskets of red berries. Rit is surprised and wonders how this has anything to do with the monument. The girl says she's a journalist and knows exactly where to find out how to get the right amount of berries. The hero notices the girl's messy hair and dark circles under her eyes. He tells her confidently that they're heading out right now to find answers and that he'll take care of the world tree himself. Manma asks in surprise, how did this even happen? He wondered if they might need another key besides the magic spell. Rit asked how many days they had left, and the girl said they still had 4 days. Realizing how much time the journey will take, the heroes understand they only have 3 days left. Rit thinks it's clear from what he heard that Mia did nothing wrong. He also realizes that the whole situation is just a setup or a trick. We have to assume that someone set a trap for Mia on purpose. The hero explains that something like this has already happened before in Goltlin, and he can't stand it, so he speaks up about it right away. The girl agrees and says that things like this happen everywhere. She adds that thanks to these events, she met Mr. Rito and Mia, and she's really happy about that. Everyone notices that they act just like thieves, no different from regular businessmen. Reed suggests that you should first find out your opponent's weaknesses. Manma asks for permission to go home because she urgently needs to return. The main character says she can handle things on her own and proudly points out that she's a journalist. The girl is holding something, and Rit jokes that if things get dangerous, she'll just throw it at him. The hero happily says he always knew she was an amazing journalist. Manma suggests they lower the price the next day, but the shopkeeper insists he won't change his mind. Herwind confidently says he'll catch the thieves soon. There are only 3 days left, and he's sure he'll track them down. Monma finds out that a man named Peril was seen with Mia. People say Peril is an important figure in the Cup Guild. She explains that there's a war going on inside the Guild of Winged Pens between different groups. She also says that Puril is the leader of the group that believes in material things. The man asks Manma if she's tired of hearing all these crazy stories. She gets a bit offended that he called her stories crazy and says she actually enjoys listening to them and never gets bored. Monma asks the man if he knows anything about this woman. Joe says Pearl is always surrounded by too many guards. Joe says that Pearl goes to bars 5 times a week. There's a great place to visit in the next town over. Monman notices that Pearl is nearby. Pearl from the Cup Guild is also present at the meeting. The main character notices that the guy next to her is definitely from the Winemakers Guild. The girl introduces herself as Rami and asks if this is the other girl's first time here. The heroine agrees that Ramai is visiting here for the first time, and she also jokes about how fluffy Ramai is. Manma wonders why these visitors are always so loud. Ramai notices that these visitors used to look sad before. The heroine is surprised when she hears the word gloomy, and Ramai nods toward a man from the Winemakers Guild. Ramai also noticed that wines with cats on their labels have become really popular lately. Manma thinks maybe buyers want to get rid of the competition, especially since Miyu got tricked with her order. Another character reminds them not to gossip about clients. Mia jokes that maybe they're both just beast folk. The main character notices that there are a lot of animal people around. The old man says he will leave soon. Manma asks what people are talking about in the bar. The main character remembers that Peril once stayed at this very inn. She's also puzzled. Why did he go to the nearby town when this place is well known for welcoming beastfolk like him? Monma decides to gather evidence against Peril and plans to blackmail him. 6 years ago, our hero often got annoyed because shipments from the imperial capital were always delayed. The hero is surprised that Mia left in the middle of the workday, while Mia is overjoyed to hear that Manma is still alive. Mia proudly shows off her unique donuts and invites everyone to try them. The heroine notices his appetite has really improved and suggests they visit the doctor together. Mia is excited to announce that she has finally opened her own market stall. Mia says this is a step toward her dream, then asks the girl if she has a dream of her own. Mom admits she just walked away when things got too tough. Mia really admires the heroine and thinks she's absolutely amazing. The main character explains that you can't just stop once you've made your escape. Running away is only the first step. She points out that getting away was a big achievement, and she's proud of it. Monma was surprised when someone called her amazing, but Mia agreed and said she really is cool. Mia says she wants to be super rich. The main character asks her what she would do if she became wealthy. Manma orders everyone to stop and return what they took. The girl is surprised that the heroine knows the man has run away. Manma also mentions she saw this man's photo in a newspaper ad. Mia suggests that Manmi should give journalism a try. She mentions that becoming a journalist is now her new dream. People praise the heroine for her great personality and impressive journalism skills. The main character notices the man leaving the hotel. The old man realizes he's running late. The main character thanks him for making the effort to come see them anyway. The girl quietly says that cats really act like liquid. The man says everything is calm in the south. The old man wants to get straight to business because he's tired. They have received some high-quality goods to buy. He says that some graceful beastwomen have just arrived straight from the capital of the empire. The main character suddenly realizes just how serious the situation is, since trading living beings is strictly forbidden on the southern continent. She decides to speak out about it and publicly calls the trader a real devil. Hirely is surprised that the hero has so many customers. The hero explains that these items are very popular in the empire. He asks about the red berries, and the other character points out that they really are trapped, just like he said before. The old man says the Winemakers Guild helps him out. He reminds the merchant that things aren't as strict here as they are in the empire. The merchant thanks the old man for his support. They tried really hard to get rid of the red berry supplier. The hero starts to wonder who is behind all of this and suspects it might be someone from the imperial capital. Mom also wonders why Mia has become their target. The main character explains that there are fewer red berries this year because of a bad harvest and poor weather. Someone notices Manmu and asks her what she's doing here. Manma felt scared when she saw a man holding a knife. A man thinks it's a rat, but the seller insists it's not a rat at all, it's actually an insect. The main character says she came very close to dying. Another character, sounding annoyed, says they really don't like bugs. The main thing the heroine realizes now is that she needs to escape. Manma says he won't open the door, but the key still works. A girl tries to open a door using her head, but ends up rolling right outside instead. The man is surprised to realize that the door should only open inward. Peril realizes the girl is from the Information Guild, so they quickly decide to catch her before she escapes. The merchant says they need to keep moving and refuses to help with the village's troubles. She also mentions that he buys beastfolk in the empire and then sells them on the southern continent. The heroine is surprised. She can't understand why anyone would team up with the emperor just to get involved with the red berries. The girl realizes she's almost out of energy. The heroine says she's done running away. Monma encourages everyone to use their special lucky charm. Grandpa says one rat might not cause much harm, but by tomorrow, there could be nothing left here at all. Ren says it gives him goosebumps. Delivery day, Monma arrived at Peril's estate. She introduces herself as Mrs. Manma from the Information Guild. The main character tells Peril that another article is going to be published today. The article says that Peril, a leader from the Maiden's Cup Guild, is secretly meeting with a mysterious man from the Empire. Mom says that besides trading creatures and manipulating the market, there might also be some spying going on for the Empire. Here I ask if this is a new comedy segment. She replies that in the Guild of Information, they only share the truth. The main character says she's heard that the Emperor owns a restaurant in this city. Mom says the artist from the guild did a great job with the portrait. It looks just like me. She also mentions that he was recognized yesterday. The heroine says that the Emperor was seen at the port and plans to board a ship tomorrow, heading to the imperial capital. She admits there's no direct proof yet, but insists it's true. The girl says that evidence will turn up soon. She suggests talking to the employees from the company that set up the lab equipment or questioning the 3 beastmen who arrived yesterday. He believed that all problems happened just because of foolish people. Grandpa sadly added that there were plenty of them in the South, too. He points out that the store has already burned down and there are no employees left. She also points out that they are good runners, but they don't always think things through. Manma adds that the Information Guild is the one keeping order here. Peril points out that if the main character didn't actually need anything, she would have published her article a long time ago. The girl says she understands what's going on and that she's happy with how things are. The main character explains that in Heartland, contracts are always taken seriously. She offers to sign a document promising that all the papers will be destroyed. Peril refuses to follow this demand, saying it's impossible for him. He also points out that people like them would have no trouble getting rid of a silly cat. Monmo explains that this is why the locals stick with the Empire, because the guilds have so much power here. Even someone really rich can't stand against them. The main character turns to the leader of the Maiden's Chalice Guild and reminds him that he already knows exactly what's happening here. The girl says that the winged hand, filled with secret knowledge, is just as strong as their own guild. She warns them not to underestimate this situation. She offers a choice: sign the contract or spend your whole life behind bars. The guild leader firmly announces that he will leave this place right away. The heroine sees a crowd gathering outside and notices a police patrol nearby. Manma reminds that she kept her promise and deleted her article, just like they agreed. She said that a stranger used her sketches and published an article under their own name, taking all the credit for her work. The police walk up to Peril and ask if they can have a quick word with him. The main character decides to stop by and grab some donuts. Mia notices a new shop right in the perfect spot on Main Street. And there are many new, friendly coworkers now. The main character says she received an apology and they admitted they made a mistake with her order. Mom says she's surprised and doesn't really get it, but maybe she just has a special talent. She suddenly realizes that things have gotten even worse. Mia can't believe how much the store has changed. The main character suggests trying something new and reassures everyone that there's no need to worry. Mia says she already knows exactly which sign she wants, so she decides to order it from the artists in the guild. The main character realizes that this new place deserves a brand new name. Mia says they're starting a new journey toward their dream, but calling the store New Journey sounds too long. The heroine happily says that wealth is just within her reach. Mia believes that success is also a kind of talent, and she emphasizes that achieving it depends completely on the person. Madma says she wants to give journalism a try and asks if she can stay a bit longer. Mia says she always feels good when she helps her friends. The main character promises that one day she'll definitely pay back what she owes. The heroine says she's willing to wait as long as it takes. Here you can buy wine and other local products made in the village of Torgen, which we mentioned earlier. Also, take a look at the article's title, A New Journey with Heartland Main Street 13, written by Manma and illustrated by Diaz. The hero sums it up. The heroine made Parala give back the land and property so that Mia could keep following orders. Monma says it's all about an eye for an eye and claims that Peril was actually the one who started the whole mess. She chooses not to tell anyone yet about the Imperial spy's connection to the Red Berries, so she won't upset Mr. Rit unnecessarily. Rit is happy that everything ended without anyone getting hurt. She asks for some praise for doing a great job. The girl doesn't know when he noticed it, and she says her scar doesn't hurt anymore. She wrote that she managed to handle the situation on her own. The main character feels happy about this, but asks not to tell Mia about it. The heroine says it's her turn now to start helping others. Manma has been studying ancient farming methods and says she also explored old documents about spirits. The main character says she has finally discovered the true purpose of these ruins. The merchant says that without wars, the progress of magic slows down by a whole century. The hero realizes that no one has noticed the documents are fake. He says he has different priorities right now and wants to wait until things settle down. Manma mentioned in her article that she used plant magic, and the merchant says he hasn't heard about that in a long time. The hero warns that an enemy is hiding in the south. The girl says she has no idea what's going on. The box won't open, even though Manma said the magic was supposed to help. The girl points towards an underground lair where a fearsome creature controls water. RIT isn't sure if this information is true, but the guild member says their group has already checked and confirmed it. The hero wonders if the dungeon is still locked, because they haven't found something important needed to get inside yet. Mia suggests taking a break to have a snack. She says that having some tea helps to clear your mind for a while. Mia also mentions that the food is delicious, but if she could choose, she'd rather have a glass of wine instead of tea. The hero warns that it's really hot right now, so everyone needs to make sure they're drinking enough water, especially the cat beasts. The girl explains that their area is farther south than the Empire, so the weather is warm and dry, and summer has just started. The heroes are worried because it hasn't rained in this region for 4 months, and the water shortage problem still isn't solved. Mia noticed that the water level in the pond hadn't gone down, even though there had been a drought for a long time. The heroes notice that the water level in the pond hasn't gone down at all, even though the sun has been shining all day. The hero notices that something strange is happening at the pond. Rita thinks there might be a connection between the pond and the monument. He explains that Mia is doing great, but they might run out of supplies because there isn't enough water. Also, the red berries they use for medicine are running low. The hero suggests to Nabi that they could dig a hole in the ground to create a passage into the underground. This way, they might be able to solve the water problem. The prophet warns that this action is very risky, and it's hard to know what will happen next. The main character confidently suggests she has a different idea and proposes that everyone moves to a new spot to discuss the situation together. Rita firmly says she will protect her homeland and will take any chance, no matter how small, to do so. The heroes agree to join forces and plan to start their mission together first thing tomorrow morning. Red admits he won't have any other options and says everything depends on what the teams decide. The hero looks around, surprised and confused, trying to figure out where he is. Rit spots a girl standing right in front of him. She asks the boy what his name is. He tells her his name is Rit. A group of heroes meets for the first time. Nabi, Mama, Mia, Adele, Nosy, the Flower People, and Frau. The hero says he'll do whatever it takes to protect his homeland. He says he doesn't want to leave the village of Torgen because he already feels at home here. She says she'll only get a name when she grows up. The hero asks what her name is. The hero realizes what's going on and says he'll come up with a name for her. He smiles and says the world tree needs the most beautiful name we can think of. The girl gently touches the hero's head. The hero shouts out Nabi and is surprised when he recognizes the girl. The main character turns to Mr. Rit and tells him that an emergency startup is about to begin. Reed is honored as a benefactor of the World Tree and gains new skills in depth and ease in everything he does. Mia asks Rita if she's okay. Rit calms the hero, saying everything is all right, and adds that 10 years have passed since the last event. He confidently says he will go to the monument. Manma asks to go with him, but Nebi warns that it might be dangerous there. The main character says that Frau knows these mountains very well and suggests that they ask him to be their guide. The group of heroes taps into their special skills, staying calm and thinking deeply as they get ready for their mission. Manma is given the order to cast a magic spell. The title benefactor of the World Tree deactivated a special barrier, but the hero is surprised and asks, "What kind of piece is this?" The hero wonders which computer he missed. Reed notices a powerful whirlpool pulling water in and creating a deep, swirling hole. He also points out that the place where Nebi's body was found looked exactly the same, and he's sure it wasn't any kind of underground room. The heroes spot an impressive building ahead. It's the Temple of the Spirit, dedicated to Undine. Mom says the temple looks absolutely amazing. The title benefactor of the World Tree broke a special barrier and cleared the way for the heroes. The heroes watch as the gates of the Undine Temple slowly open before them. The heroes spot a staircase leading down, but they realize the entrance to the temple is deep and shrouded in darkness. Rita suggests going down on her own, but the others insist on sticking together and going as a group. Nama excitedly says their story will become a part of history. Frau is determined not to let anyone down. The hero tells everyone to follow him and warns them not to wander off. The girl feels a slight shake in the ground, while Rit smiles, happy that the road is bright under the moonlight. Frau gets scared because no one else is around, but Manma laughs happily as if nothing is wrong. Then Rit asks Manma if she isn't scared. Reed notices the moss glowing brightly and mentions that the deeper they go, the more different types of moss they find. The hero realizes it's just a crab, and Frau jokes that Manma smells like sunshine and ink. He points to the altar, standing in the middle of the room. Another character mentions that the answer can be found right at the center of the altar. The heroes guess that this altar was probably used for worshipping spirits. The heroes notice that they're being invited to come inside. Rita notices that the plants are growing faster, but the water level hasn't changed at all. When someone asked the hero how much water he had taken, he explained that the magic water refills itself, even if you take some out. The hero confidently says he has to dive in. Rita wonders if this is a symbiosis or parasitism and says she would like to learn more about it. The hero thanks Frau for letting him take a few extra leaves to boost the effect, and Frau agrees, reassuring him that everything will be just fine. Rit suggests adding some glowing moss. Nebai confirms that all vital signs are stable and everything is ready. He explains that his decision was inspired by watching the flower people sunbathe. He calls this gadget the grass ball. The hero claims that it only needs a little light to make oxygen, so they'll be able to breathe underwater. Rit wonders if the heroes really trust him. The girl says her owner isn't very good at picking names. Manma tells Frau that she's just too soft-hearted. Rhett asks her if she's really coming with them. The main character admits she's actually afraid of the water. The main character suggests that Frau should wait here, but she feels anxious and isn't sure if it's safe to stay alone. Reed explains that if the red flower wilts, it means they won't come back. He asks her to stay in the village and write a letter to Adele. Rita says she's the backup, and the main character agrees to take on this important task. The hero is getting ready to go on an adventure. The woman asks why Manma isn't coming with them. The girl wishes the heroes good luck. The hero uses his exploration skill. The heroes notice that the glowing moss helps them see more clearly in the darkness, even though they're in a cave now instead of the temple. Rick checks if Manma is okay, then he asks where they should go next. Nabai explains that it's hard to move in the water because of the mana, which makes it tricky, so he asks everyone to be careful. The main character says that the most important thing right now is to protect Manmo. The hero sees lots of underwater plants and thinks the magic in the water might be causing them to grow so much. Rit is surprised to find some plants he doesn't recognize. He explains that local plant magic here mixes both water and earth magic. He admits that learning about these unique plants is really exciting for him. The hero is amazed by how much new stuff he's discovering about the world, especially about seaweed, and he promises that he'll definitely learn more about it. The group of heroes suddenly senses a powerful surge of magic. It's a clear sign that someone, or something, is racing toward them at incredible speed. Rit notices how comfortable she feels in the water and says that it's really beautiful here. Frode accidentally called the hero Sir again and apologized, saying she's still not used to speaking in human language. The flower people say they can share their thoughts without speaking, just by sending them to each other. Mom wonders if she's ready to take a risk for her job. Every day, Frawl dreams of traveling the world. She wants to know how to become stronger so she can protect others. She also wonders how she can be like Rit. The hero notices that the scenery looks just like a starry night sky. The woman says she wants to go back there someday. The girl replies that the sky she saw there is still her favorite. The main character suddenly hears footsteps and starts to get anxious, worried she won't be able to call for help. A terrifying creature appears with its mouth wide open, revealing sharp, menacing teeth. Nabai tries to understand what's going on. Rit warns everyone that there are dangers all around. Suddenly, fish-like creatures appear in front of the heroes. The hero exclaims in surprise, pointing out some fishermen. He starts to wonder if they've been here all along, and then realizes that these fish people actually look familiar to him. A young man realizes that ever since he arrived on the southern continent, he keeps experiencing new and unusual things every day. He asks the sky what's going on because he hasn't noticed anything himself. The prophet says everyone must hold tightly to the ball of grass to stay safe. The heroine admits she felt scared when someone started speaking with her voice. The heroes notice there's no sign of aggression around them and wonder to themselves, Are these creatures crying or are they dancing? At the same time, they spot some strange new activity happening. Frau calls out to Rita while sitting on her horse. The heroes start talking about a strange creature that looks a lot like a horse. Suddenly, Frone climbs onto its back, and everyone is amazed by his bold move. Rit notices the creature's eyes shine brightly, and its hooves are covered with seashells. These strange details immediately catch his attention. The search ends when we discover the algae bee, a strange creature that looks like a mix between a horse and a magical water spirit. Nabai asks Frau if she understands the owner, and she says that she does. The heroes notice that Fru communicates with the creatures using hand gestures. Frau says she's inside a bubble where she can breathe even though there aren't any leaves, and Rit asks her how there's air in there in the first place. Frode remembers the herbal ball that lets her breathe underwater. The hero asks how the plants on Frozy have affected her brain, saying he'd like to study it. He adds that this is the second time he's noticed it today. Rit asks what these creatures around them are saying. The heroine says these creatures are guiding them and inviting them to come closer. The girl says that these creatures are asking for help. The heroes remembered that long ago, when the world tree disappeared, the water spirit fell into a deep sleep. To protect Undim, the water spirit, they sealed the temple. The hero thanks her for the great translation and notes how far they've traveled. He adds that without Kelpie and the bubble magic, they never could have made it this deep. The heroes notice how everything around them is huge and beautiful. They are amazed by the impressive size and stunning architecture. The heroes are in a grand hall with elegant architecture and soft, warm lighting. Rit says there's no one here. Manma says they need to write everything down while they're still on land, and Rit asks about Frau. The hero notices that Nabi is starting to lose control. The blessing of the world tree has been activated. The rhythm starts to repeat faster. The hero and Frau are standing next to the fisherman, all together. Rit notices that the creature has semi-transparent blue skin and ears that look like fish fins. She also sees that the creature's dress moves just like flowing water. He points to something invisible. It's the spirit of the water. The hero shares the story of how Andon awakened. The main character notices the creatures are bowing, just like people do in Japan, and says they must be really happy. The hero looks on in surprise as a girl suddenly appears right in front of him. Undine calls human children arrogant and says they are foolish sprouts that will never grow. She blames the heroes for destroying their sacred tree and disturbing her peaceful rest. The group of heroes notices that she is extremely angry. Rit calls Undine and tells her where everything will take place. The main character realizes that magic has formed a sharp blade made of water, and it could seriously hurt him. She's a redhead and has felt that way for as long as she can remember. Undying accuses the hero of digging into secrets that should stay hidden and sacred, making it clear he's not happy about it. Rin notices that his words have upset the woman. He feels confident that he can fix things, while Nabai reminds the master to stay focused. Brav asks Mr. Rita to open the door, while Manma says if they're going to die, she'd rather do it drunk. The girl happily shares that this wine was made from berries picked by everyone in the village, even though they had little water and the ground was dry. The hero uses his middle manager skills. He carefully listens to the customers' complaints and kindly asks them to explain what's going on. The heroes are sitting at a table that's filled with all kinds of delicious food. The water spirit Undine is angry and upset. She says that even if she sleeps for a very long time, her anger won't go away. She blames the heroes, saying it's their fault she fell asleep in the first place. The hero looks worried and says he's really sorry about what happened. Manma also notices that Rin and Undine keep talking to each other quietly. Frau asks if she did everything right, and Rit thanks her for saving him. While Rit kept the Undine entertained, Frau came back from the village with more wine and snacks. Undine is delighted by the delicious taste of the wine. Rit is glad they've managed to please the water spirit. A young man invites you to try dishes made in his village and share stories about local traditions. Undine says it reminds her of the past. She remembers the old days when magic still existed in the world, and people would come together to share stories and enjoy a glass of wine. Undine notices that these creatures they encounter show no physical injuries, completely absorb all the surrounding natural mana, and then suddenly vanish without a trace. The main character sadly explains that when the world tree withered, all the colors disappeared from the world. Rhett wondered if people are to blame for their own problems. The hero realizes that, in the end, all worlds are really the same. Undiane says that there's barely any natural mana left in the world to use for magic. She admits that Rit managed to block her attack, even though there was no magic energy in the temple. The hero explains that you don't need natural mana for modern magic. It's enough to use the mana stored inside your own body. Undine says that people often do this, give gifts or offer help to a strong warrior. She asks what they want from her in return. The main character asks why she was woken up. Rita says they need water, and as long as she sleeps, the drought will continue. Undine refuses to help, saying she has no reason to assist those who destroyed the world. Frode tells Andean that Mr. Ritz saved them from the flower people. She says that because of their hard work, their products now taste delicious. The girl explains that for spirits like Undine's, natural mana is as essential to them as air is to humans. The main character says that without natural magic, their survival is at risk, even though everyone already knows that. Undine blames people for destroying the world tree. She says that after everything people have done, they still expect her to do something. Undine feels like this is just another way of making fun of her. Undine accuses the heroes of fixing the world just to benefit themselves, calling them disgusting monsters. The hero admits that he understands everything and agrees that what happened was wrong. That's exactly why he left the Empire. The pawn tells Undine that things aren't really as they seem, and that Mr. Rit is actually just Mr. Rit. Undine says that sooner or later, people will destroy them anyway, so if you have to hate someone, it might as well be humans. Reed says that ambition is the only thing that inspires him. He admits that he's truly a monster. Undine warns, say one more word, and she'll cut your head off. The hero is trapped by tentacles and struggles to say something. He wanted to study magic and plants, and he explained that he planned to live on his own. The hero admits that his wishes changed once he arrived on the southern continent. He replies that their goals are exactly the same. Rit asks if maybe they should team up and work together. The hero says that if Undine helps with the water, he can bring this place back to its former beauty. Undine wonders if someone as small as him can really make a difference. She says the world tree is gone. Rit says that the world tree grows right in their village, and because of it, everything around is full of life and beauty. She is surprised to hear that the world tree belongs to humans and says she doesn't believe it. The main character still doesn't fully understand what's going on. Nabai suggests that she can explain the details. Rit notices that the water feels warm. The girl asks the hero for his name, and he replies, "I'm Rit Rickart." Andin says she can only share her power once. The heroes thank her for her help. The hero was surprised to learn that this power would only last for 100 years. Undine explains that 100 years feels like just a moment to her, but for humans, that's already several generations. The man suggests releasing the water, but Undine points out that there's nothing they can do right now. The hero asks if we pour water on dry land, will trees start to grow there? But then wouldn't the trees just get flooded? Undine explains that plant roots help loosen the soil, making it easier for water to soak in. She says it's better to make changes step by step, so the environment has time to adapt, and in just 100 years, this place could come back to life. Rit says they have to act right away because he made a promise. Undine admits she wishes she could act more naturally. The main character has come up with a new idea and is excited to share it with everyone. Mom is sure that you can't plant trees all over the hill at once, but she knows it's something that needs to be done. Mia says everything will work out just fine and confidently adds that Mr. Rit will help them again. Manma says she believes in him, just like always, and today is a really important day for her wine. The hero calls out to Undine, asking her to wake up. Undina says she still can't feel any natural mana and notices that the area around her looks different. The hero gently asks the creature to forgive him and promises that soon they'll be able to swim together again. The main character says that if the world tree grows back, the world can heal too, so she suggests they just wait and see what happens. Undiane agrees to help out for one day as a thank you for the wine and suggests getting started right away. Rit thanks her and says that's all he really needs. The hero confidently promises that he will keep his word. Andin says she didn't expect this at all. The magic of rain starts to work. The hero asks Nabai for help, and she says she knows exactly what he needs. Accelerated growth is shown by how quickly the plants develop. The outcome wasn't very impressive, just as we thought. In the end, only a few trees actually grew. The hero notices someone has entered and looks surprised by what's going on. He points out that young shoots are already starting to appear all over the mountain. The girl asks the hero how he managed to do it. Rit explains that he used air magic, but admits he doesn't have enough power to do everything he wants. He says he controls a special power that helps trees grow faster, but also keeps them from getting too big, making sure they stay under control. The girl wonders how these flower creatures are able to use magic. The hero notices that the creatures don't seem to understand what she's talking about. As you might guess, people who work with flowers get along well with plants. He even says he can actually talk to them. Rita explains that, thanks to Manma's research, they found the best seeds for the mountains, and Mia was the one who bought them. Nusi brought some seeds and showed the villagers of Torjan how they could work together to achieve something important for everyone. The main character happily watches as the plants begin to grow. The hero thanks everyone, admitting that he couldn't have done it without their support. The girl explains that without the magic of the world tree, it simply can't be done. Undo enjoys the fresh scent of greenery and mentions how lovely the gentle breeze feels. She says they're not done yet and turns back to Richuricart, who reminds her that this is just the beginning. The World Tree Benefactor title has been unlocked. The hero asks Undine to share her power with him. He says he's already made his choice. She understands what's going on and agrees to help. Due to a strong magical reaction, the Undine transforms. The hero says that everything is ready, and now it's time to see what their actions have led to. Water that carries the power and will of the World Tree. A powerful burst of water suddenly erupts. The result is a beautiful forest filled with trees. The main character happily says that everything worked out just fine. I'm proud and very grateful to Undina for her help. Rit says she's had enough. She demands the hero be quiet and insists that she knows more about this place than anyone else. The World Tree calls out as the heroes celebrate by the riverside. The main character thinks back to her past. Pharaoh decides to thank Mr. Reedy. The hero asks Frau to hold his hand. Reed says his body just acted on its own, and he's sorry for what happened. He happily says that their plan worked out because they all teamed up and worked together. Fowl says that Reed isn't just about him, it's all about teamwork. The main character excitedly looks at the hero, calls him Mr. Rit, and says that he's the one who saved them. The hero says no. He admits that he has always found people unpleasant. Reed shares that he became a hero because he wanted to stand out from everyone else. The hero has only recently realized his mistakes, and now he sees how much he missed out on. He realizes now that he could have said and done so much more. The hero admits that he left everything behind and chose to live alone, just to be surrounded by beautiful plants. He now thinks this decision was foolish, selfish, and even a bit shameful. Rit says he's just an ordinary, even pitiful person. Fruz admits she finds him hard to understand, but she still thinks he's a good person. The hero remembers the moment when the girl took his hand. It was then that he truly started to understand himself. Finally, he's comfortable with who he is. It just feels amazing. Rit says she doesn't like being called the boss and wants them to be equals. The girl apologizes for interrupting them, but she points out the waterfall right in front of them. Rit asks why Frode didn't tell him earlier, but she apologizes and says she didn't want to bother him. He explains that he can't control the raft, so they'll have to jump. Fishermen help the heroes overcome their challenges. The main character notices that Mr. Ret looks a bit unusual today. Rita says the flower-shaped pillow is a great idea. The hero asks Frau if she's okay. Frau thanks Rita for being her friend. Reed agrees and says that they are friends. He thanks Frau for all her help. The main character calls Rita to remind her that they are almost at the village, so now isn't the time to joke around. The hero happily announces that everything went according to plan, but the girls quickly notice that something strange is happening to the World Tree. The girl notices that the tree has grown a whole meter. First, the main character talks to Rita, then she turns to her father.